Directing traffic, gonna go deep, has a man deep. It is caught for the touchdown. Corey Davis.
What does he do? Attacks leverage. If he's outside leverage, he doesn't want you to beat him outside. So stem towards him, hold him outside, stamp outside. Drive face, full cell vertical, get into the blind spot, and he absolutely burns him. Corner is lost. He literally has no idea where Wilson is.
Really high floor, really high ceiling. We could be talking about the best corner in the league. Sauce can do that.
This is actual film. This is actual football talk. It's a football show. We're supposed to talk football, not storylines.
And we are here to talk storylines, Kyle Smith. What is up, my man?
Not much. Every time, it's funny, every time you play that intro, I was like, yeah, I sound pretty smart there, man. Because Sauce kind of definitely met my high expectations, and you could argue even exceeded them. Yeah. So if you're a longtime follower of the show, we were hyping him up for a long time. And just the fact that, kudos, shout out to Michael Nania for snipping that many, many, many months before the season started. It makes me seem smarter. So then that brightens my day up a little bit. But Joe, what the hell, man? There's still no quarterback news yet.
Dude, I'm bored. I'm just bored. And we're talking kind of pre-show before we got on here. And I'm in a holding pattern because I know that we're going to get a quarterback, whether that be Rodgers or Carr. I'm pretty confident it's going to be either one of those guys in the next, 10 or so days. That's going to be a full-blown two season review. That's going to take me weeks to do. And then it's the players are going to come in from free agency, and that's going to be full bore for another 2-3 weeks, whatever, until the draft comes. And the draft comes. So I'm going to be pretty much, once it happens, I'm going to be shotgunning Jets content until about July. And then you have a couple of weeks, and then guess what? We have preseason, and we had the Hall of Fame game, which is an announcement, which, by the way, I want to hit on that really quickly before we even get through the rest of the stuff. But quick thoughts on the Hall of Fame game versus the Browns. Obviously, we expected it with Klecko and Revis going into the Hall of Fame same year. But overall thoughts just in general with that. Well, now I guess fourth preseason game.
The funny thing is you broke the news to me because I didn't even hear about that before then. I don't know why.
There you go.
But yeah, it wasn't a shock. We did talk about it 2 weeks ago that it seemed like it was a likely possibility. But I mean, like we said the other day, how many guys are actually going to play in that extra game? I guess it's overall a good thing because if you're really scared about injuries and such, then okay, you can use it. You could just bench the players that, and you're only going to play a guy unless they're close to 100%. You're not going to play anybody who's banged up or whatever, but it is an extra time to evaluate some of the young guys and stuff. So, I guess it's kind of whatever. I don't know stats. Is there any stats that prove that teams that get an extra preseason game turn out to be well? Do their rookies pan out to be any better? I don't know, man.
No, I think you're thinking way too much about it.
I think so too. But you asked me my thoughts about it, so I'm trying to think.
No. The only thing, and we didn't track this last year, and I don't think we really even noticed it or brought it up, but did the players 75 through 90 play less last preseason with 3 games than the years prior? I don't really remember tracking exactly how much those players played, but if it gives you an opportunity to evaluate those guys, then it's a good thing. Obviously, barring no major setbacks and injuries, let's say we draft a 4th round, interior offensive lineman, and he gets injured, then I'm going to be pissed and hate that we played the extra preseason game. But I guess it's good. Jets football earlier, and it's gonna be funny because everybody watches that game even though it's preseason and nobody's gonna play, and then everybody focuses on the Jets. So I'll be a little bit nervous not seeing the Jets for a while. Then they're playing in a preseason game. Is it stupid for the Jets for me to be nervous about the Jets playing in a preseason game? 1,000%, but it is what it is. But yeah, massive holding pattern right now, just waiting to release content and makeup content. I've been doing some draft stuff behind the scenes, just getting ready for that. But I don't know if we're going to have the 13th overall pick, Kyle. They were talking again pre-show about the combine. The combine's happening right now. People are running and stuff. Last year it was Aiden Hutchinson's arms and how is Ike Ekwonu going to move it? How does Sauce Gardner look in transitions because of his long legs? All this stuff. This year, I don't give 2 shits about anything. No, there's nothing I care about in this NFL combine, which is I guess almost bad to say as a football content creator draft, trying to look into the draft and stuff, to me saying I don't care about the combine, but I'm just so in a holding power at the quarterback right now. I'm getting legitimately frustrated and just bored at this point. So
maybe you shouldn't, because, and I think Robbie's kind of had some tweets like this in recent days where he said something like, the thing about the Jets is that the Jets are not showing the league that they're, and I'm paraphrasing him. I don't want to misquote him, but I think he said something like, it might be hard for fans to accept this, but the Jets aren't the same old Jets, and they actually think that they are good, and they actually have some talent, and young talent that is, moving forward.
Mhm.
So they don't have to be super desperate. So while it is frustrating, and you're, as a Jets fan who's been burned so many times, you're really concerned that, the Jets aren't going to get either one of these two guys.
Mhm.
And then what the hell? But, maybe there should be some optimism in the sense that, like, hey, listen, the Jets are, playing a little slow, and they're making sure they make the right decision. Because,
yeah.
let's say that, you have a chance to get either one of these guys, and you make the wrong decision and you get the wrong guy, and then the other guy goes and has a great season elsewhere. That would kind of suck. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I'll hit on the quarterback stuff, Carr and Rodgers and stuff. I'm sure the chat will bring it up, but we have some topics to actually get into. Tannehill, Carr visits, Dwayne Brown, Q, some news about Becton. I'm not sure how much you've seen about that. Maybe some sneaky needs for the Jets. Some talking about players either staying on the team this year. ABT, we're gonna talk about him in a little bit. So we actually have some topics to hit on that's like popped in the last couple of weeks. God, did you put this up?
Eagle, the only way this happens is if the Jets win the Super Bowl. If that happens, I will shave the very next day. Mark my words.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what your chin looks like. Like it's almost like James Harden, like they've done some of those things where like they removed the beard from what he used to look like. He looks like a completely different person. I have no idea what your chin looks like, so I don't want to see it.
I'll send you a picture. Too bad.
I'll just delete it. So we have some stuff to talk about, and the thing with the Carr versus the Rodgers thing, quickly to hit on that, just in terms of like the timeline. When we're talking about this, a month, 2 months, 3 months ago, Kyle, even after that Patriots game, we're talking about options at quarterbacks. We've been talking about it for quite a while, and in general, since I've been a Jets fan, we've been talking about quarterback options and if they're working out, if they're not, whatever. But the timeline actually worked out well for the Jets in terms of we thought that they were going to have to make a decision on Carr quickly, February 14th, 15th, whatever that date was, 13th, whatever that exact day was. We thought he's going to sign pretty soon after that. And we were thinking, okay, well, it's Carr right now, or you lose Carr and you can wait on Rodgers, but they're kind of coming down to the same timeline. It seems like Rodgers might actually make his decision before Carr, and maybe Carr wants to see where he's going to go. Maybe he wants to go to the Jets. Maybe if Aaron Rodgers stays, then the Jets get in a bidding war with the Saints and the Panthers, and he goes to the Panthers, uses the Jets as leverage. Like there's a whole bunch of different ways you can look at it. But in general, the timeline hasn't worked out bad for the Jets in terms of them being patient because both quarterbacks are still out there. It's just frustrating that it's March 2nd, and we thought we were going to have an answer a week ago. You have Aaron Rodgers coming out and saying, well, Brett Favre, and, it was frustrating to wait for him while simultaneously making everybody frustrated waiting on him right now. So, but in general, it did work out.
Yeah, I saw that too. So I guess we'll see. Do you think we'll have the answer by the end of this week?
Well, one other thing which I'll promote now with this is by Sunday or Monday, I'm recording a Patreon exclusive podcast with Buffalo Jets fan, who I appreciate all of you guys who have joined up. If you joined
What's
up,
his name, by the way, do we have a name for him?
I don't know if he tells people his name. Does he? I don't know.
He might not want it out there.
I don't know. I think he's. I know it. I just blanked out on it for a second, but I know it. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But Buffalo Jets fan podcast. It's like each one of them are like 45 minutes to an hour. Some will be 30 minutes, but we record 2 episodes. Jump on $5 a month, and if you are, you can be a mod on here. I'm gonna add some stuff to it. I'm gonna add maybe like a premium Slack. Maybe I'm gonna add some like minor film reviews or something like that, or maybe emojis for the channel like Ryan does. So like I'm gonna figure some stuff out with the patrons as well, but link in the description for that. And in terms of the answer, I want the answer by freaking Monday. Like I don't want to have to do another podcast without having an answer at quarterback. I hope we have it by the end of this live stream. But in general, you're talking about free agency starting in 11 days. You have Carr out there saying he wants to sign quickly because he wants to recruit guys. And just in general, you want to know where your home's going to be. Like there's a lot of anticipation for the players as well. Well, maybe not Rodgers, but at least Carr. So I'm assuming by March 9th, we will have an answer by the next time this live stream streams. Are you on the same page, or are we, of course, going to have to wait it out until, March 13th at 3:59 p.m. right before free agency starts, because that's our luck?
I think there's going to be something before then. I can't see why. I mean, either one of them, it's in their best interest to, like let's say the Jets really waited long and hard for Rodgers, and that's who they want. And I'm forgetting his name at the moment right now, but the big 6'5", 230+ pound receiver that plays for the Packers. Let's say that Rodgers Lazard really wants him here. I mean, like it makes sense to, get the shit done ASAP so that, they can recruit. And like, listen, recruiting is a real thing. Players try to do it. Doesn't always work and stuff, but who more so than a quarterback has the ability to recruit players? Now, nobody's Tom Brady. No one has that resume, but I mean, like, look at how many players wanted to come play with Tom Brady. He literally brought guys out of retirement to come play with him. So, it does have something. And obviously, if you want to make some of that happen in free agency, it makes sense to do it sooner rather than later, make a decision. So I doubt that they would wait up until the start of free agency before either one of them made their decision.
I think by next Thursday, we will have an answer. Like, just please, God, let me start working on some of the quarterback stuff, because I started watching Derek Carr and I'm like, 2, 3, 4 games in, whatever it is. And I'm like,
you don't want to do 2 seasons if it's not him. Do
I want to watch all this stuff, write down all this stuff, the strengths, the weaknesses, like cross check and just think about the plays.
Joe,
and
the other thing you got to think about too is when you do, let's say you do actually sign him, when that does happen, when you're watching the film, you're going to be so much more invested and so much more engaged and interested too. So you're going to, just because the fact that you are more engaged, you'll pick up on some more of those nuances than you would if you're not sure if he's going to be the guy. Oh
yeah. You could definitely start to get like glazed over in terms of watching guys. Like the 70th rep, it kind of just floats over. And that's like some of these guys are like, oh, I watched like 100 prospects this week. It's like, how'd you watch 100 prospects this week with really knowing any, even 10 prospects in a week is a lot for me to
didn't
really
do your due diligence. That's
yes,
sure.
but a lot of these guys who put up these big boards and these draft sites, it's like, oh, well, we come out with from I don't know, from January till February, we made a top 100 big board. It's like, how'd you watch 100 players? Like, it doesn't make much sense to me. And they watch like 2 or 3 games, but nonetheless, Marvin Gunn's $20 super chat. I don't see any comment underneath of it, but nonetheless, just showing
thank you so much,
for the
Marvin.
show. So I appreciate you, Marvin. Let's say hello to some people in the chat, answer some questions in the chat if they have any. And then if we need some topics, I have some topics, Kyle, that I've just been thinking about the last couple of weeks. And we have to get back to the shows where we actually do like some theme topics. We have to do like a stat revisit from 2022, like our predictions and how wrong or right we were. We got to do a bunch of that stuff still. So,
wait, Joe, hold on. We actually did get a chat from Marvin Guns. So he says, what are your concerns with Rodgers as a player in terms of athleticism, motivation, etc.?
You want to go on that first? You want me to answer?
You answer first and then I'll go.
So the concerns as a player is obviously one, is he going to be here past 1 year? Are you going to trade, not even trade all the assets? Cause I think there's a like a compensation pick, for if he plays in 2024 or not. But in general, just him for a year or Carr, him for a year, or any other quarterback options. A year is not enough for me. Even if it is Rodgers, 2 years, okay, I can get on the Rodgers versus Carr thing, but just for a year, I wouldn't necessarily want it. So is he staying for a year? Is he going to, and another thing is too, like a lot of these guys are young on the team, and I don't want to overstate it, but is him not coming in until training camp, and not necessarily like caring, is that going to affect the players, or is he even going to do that? Like I'm obviously saying the worst case scenario where he doesn't really care, or is he motivated? He got traded. He's going to come in for, OTAs and all that stuff. I don't really know, but that's a possibility that he kind of just is very nonchalant about his commitment to the team. I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'll show up when I got to. I know the offense. That's a slight concern. Athleticism. The thing with him is like, I think he's always going to have his arm and his touch. His touch is ridiculous. But people assume the best for Rodgers in terms of like the Rodgers stands, and I'm on both. I'm right in the middle between the Rodgers and the Carr thing. But people assume the best for him, like, oh, he's going to be 2021 Rodgers. He's going to be that again. Last year, broken finger. Receivers who, obviously were young. But what happens if he is on the slide, Kyle, with his athleticism? He was great a year ago, but our time is undefeated, so what if he does start to slide athletically? What if his deep ball is not as good? What if his arm strength is not as good? He's not as mobile as he once was. That's starting to tick down the slightest bit, but in general, I think people expect the best out of Rodgers. Like he's going to be that 5th or 6th best quarterback in the league. Some games 4th, some games the best quarterback in the league. But what happens if he's not and he's the 10th or 11th best quarterback in this league if he takes a severe step back this year? So there's questions about the athleticism and just him as a player because he's 39 years old.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, if it's for 1 year, there's no way I'm going the Rodgers route. 2, I can live with it, but even 2 is like, man, like I want like 3 from him. But again, like, can he make it 3 years?
Yeah, and I'm going to interrupt you right in the beginning, just so you can get the other points out after, so you remember them or whatever. We don't get into whatever. But with Rodgers, if he was to say, "Hey, I'll come to the Jets, but I'm not going to commit to the second year," are you saying no and completely pivoting to Carr? Are you taking that risk? And I honestly,
if I'm the Jets, if I'm the Jets, you're telling me I only got 1 year with you that's guaranteed? No, thanks.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you need a commitment from him that he's going to show up for 2 years. But it just, I'm getting so done with waiting for this guy. But in general, obviously,
I mean, I know anything can happen in the NFL, and especially if the Jets crush another Jets draft class like they did this year, like they could, really potentially make a deep push in the playoffs. I mean, who thought the Giants would make it to the second round of the playoffs this past year? I certainly didn't. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason why the Giants lost to the Eagles 3 times this past year, and they're in the same division, obviously. That Eagles roster compared to the Giants roster, top to bottom, night and day. All right. So there is a difference between, making it to the playoffs and maybe even making some noise in the playoffs between like actually, making a legit Super Bowl run. I mean, like the Jets are certainly a lot closer than they were, but I don't think they're that close yet. So I think it is more realistic that you're thinking Sauce's 3rd year, Garrett Wilson's 3rd year. Okay, maybe that might actually be the year that you can, actually win the championship. I mean, I know it's NFL and anything can happen any given Sunday, but you also do have to be a little realistic. So I'm not signing up for 1 year. No way. Yeah.
And like, if it was a normal year where the free agent quarterbacks are nothing, like when's the last time there's even been a quarterback close to him in free agency? Obviously, well, we have Cousins, right? In 2017.
You talking about Rodgers or are you talking about Carr?
Carr. So it's not, and the point is, it's not only, okay, it's just 1 year from Rodgers, which again, in general, I would take, but it's also 1 year from Rodgers, and you're missing out on the best free agent quarterback since, in the last 5 years. You're not going to see another one like Carr in the next 1, 2, 3 years. You wouldn't assume, just based on, history of free agent quarterbacks, because they don't really hit free agency too often. It has to be a special circumstance. And in this one, it seems like the dysfunction between him and Josh McDaniels, and we know how stubborn Josh McDaniels is. So that's why they're, obviously, they're moving on from him. But with Rodgers, if it's only a year, I rather commit to the Carr for 3 or 4 than just Rodgers for 1. But past Kirk Cousins in 2017, I believe that was a year. I really don't remember many free agent quarterbacks just being out there for grabs.
Speaking of stubbornness, and you mentioned Josh McDaniels having that attribute. Obviously, Bill Belichick is to a certain extent stubborn. But if you kind of look at that whole Belichick tree, there is some of that. Mm-hmm. Bill O'Brien, right? And there was another one that had come to mind. But Patricia, and then even the Titans head coach, former linebacker, Vrabel.
Yeah, Vrabel.
So I don't know. Is it something with these Belichick guys that it's my way or the highway? I don't really know, but interesting. Yeah, we can't sign up for 1 year. No how, no way. Marvin Guns did give us another $10 super chat. And I think he does have another separate comment. I heard Rodgers is a fan of Ayn Rand, writer and philosopher who extols capitalism and man as heroic. I think I've heard that too somewhere.
I've never heard anything about it, so I cannot comment on this comment at all, Kyle. So if you want to take that, I don't.
Okay, long story short, for people who don't know, Ayn Rand used to live in former Soviet Union. Came to the United States and spoke vehemently against communism, wrote several novels, most famous of which is Atlas Shrugged. I've actually never read it. In the school where I'm at, sometimes the students read The Fountainhead. Ayn Rand is a pretty famous novelist. Personally, I've heard her writing kind of really sucks. Apparently, some of the fictional characters have these long, kind of like fake soliloquies where they're like speaking to themselves for pages on end. But anyway, she is certainly an interesting person. If you ever hear some of her interviews, she has some very interesting interviews on Donahue. Mm-hmm. Joe's probably like, what the hell are you talking about right now? I mean, here's the thing about Rodgers. Rodgers is certainly very much an individual. And Ayn Rand was very much into individualism and like not communism. Like, hey, listen, like, he's all about himself, right? And like you can kind of see that with like his familial relationships, and he marches to the beat of his own drum. And like, I'm not going to take a certain product just because you tell me. And yeah, you might think me going to this little darkness retreat is stupid or whatever, but I don't really care what you think. I'm going to do it anyway. So I could definitely see, like, I didn't hear Rodgers specifically talk about this, but I could see him liking somebody like her because of that individualism. And apparently Marvin says that I get it.
There you go. Look at that, Kyle. That's why we have you for philosophers and people in the Soviet Union. I don't know all this shit. So whatever. That's you. That's perfect. We have a teacher here. But yeah, no, it's just with him, and he loves the attention too. And he is an individual. And I'm not going to criticize people for thinking differently and thinking outside the box and doing whatever they got to do, when they're not, throwing or under center for my football team. As long as it's not illegal, I really don't give a shit. But it is just annoying that he knows how much people are waiting for this and teams are waiting for this. And he's still like, oh, I haven't really talked to the Packers. I'm going to Darkness Retreat. Like, I get it's a big decision, I guess, but it is getting to the point now where it's just like frustrating. We almost just want to see Carr here and just get it done. But again, my major reason for wanting Carr was the fact that I thought you have to make a decision prior to Aaron Rodgers, but now that it seems like they're going to be decided at the same time, I'm okay. I'm 50-50. I really don't mind either way, which is kind of odd because people are so black and white or black or white. And it's, I want this or I want that, but I'm pretty much good with either. The thing I will say though, is if Carr is going to the Saints or the Panthers, whatever, and he's hearing that they offer him a contract and he's thinking about signing it, then if you call the Packers, you say, hey, is he getting traded? Is he not getting traded? Well, he still doesn't know. Okay, hang up. And Carr, we're going to match their offer, if not exceed said offer, and you're going to be the quarterback. But you cannot say, oh, well, we'll take our chances on Rodgers. If that happens, then it's just idiotic. But I'm sure at a point in negotiations, Carr's agents will call the Jets, unless he's dead set on, I don't care what the Jets offer, I want to go to the Panthers. But if it's about money or a little bit about money, to call the Jets and say, hey, he's about to sign this deal. Do you have anything better for us? At that point, you freaking commit to Carr. But past that, I'm okay with waiting for Rodgers, but it has to be in the next couple of days. It's really annoying. But nonetheless, Eagle thing, what's up? Sneakers and Boots, Blake, Kyle and Joe are smart people. Andrew, what's up, guys? Can't believe this QB shit. Yeah, it's really, really frustrating because I'm, again, just in a holding pattern. The Jets are the best QB needy team if the 49ers aren't in the market, but who's the next best team and how could they entice these quarterbacks that would make sense? Kyle, who's the next best quarterback option or quarterback needy team in your opinion?
I'm trying to think of the whole league right now. I mean, the Saints and the Panthers are obviously in the market for Carr, but I don't think either of them is better than the Jets. I almost want to say that the Panthers seem to be better than the Saints, even though
I agree.
I feel like the Saints kind of have like an old, like Cam Jordan, like he's a good player still, but he is on the older end.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the offensive line is starting to get banged up a little bit and stuff. Their cornerback Lattimore, he's good, but what is he close to 30 now? Maybe. And corners, they start to take a dive once they get near their 30s. And they're
27, 28, right? Because he's drafted in 2017.
Somebody's saying the Dolphins, but I mean, I don't think the Dolphins necessarily view themselves as QB needy. Even though I think they could upgrade, but I just don't think it. Tua had the season he has. I don't think you can move on from him so easily, and I don't think they will for that reason. But I think the Saints, because of their cap situation, the Panthers have to seem more enticing overall. Are there any other QB needy teams that I'm missing, Joe?
People say like the Bucks might need one or might think about adding one. People talk about the Falcons. People talk about obviously
the
Jets
Raiders are definitely better than the Falcons. Raiders, okay, they don't really count because they're getting rid of Carr. And the Bucks, I think the Bucks still do have a good squad.
I know they're older, and I know they have some cap problems, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. So their future is not very. If Carr is looking for stability and to win Super Bowls in the future, it seems like they're on the decline in terms of that roster. So
yeah, I mean they're definitely not
Colts,
as high as they were.
Eagle mentioned Colts as well.
Colts. What happened to their offensive line? What happened to Quentin Nelson this year? Apparently, he took a huge dive in terms of his play. I'm trying to think. They got Buckner on defense. They have
Leonard.
It's not Darius Leonard anymore. What's his name now? Shaquille Leonard?
Shaquille Leonard. They got Kenny Moore. They have some players on defense. There's another defensive lineman who's pretty good on their team who I'm forgetting the name of.
So the Jets always like to get clowned for ownership and management and all that kind of stuff. But, the Colts, Jim Irsay, like, and firing Frank Reich, was that the right decision to fire him after what he did with that team and to fire him, not mid-season, but close to it. Do you really view that as a more stable situation to go there? I don't know. So the Jets definitely seem like they are near the top of the list.
Yeah, they're definitely near the top, if not the top. I would say in terms of like the teams we hear the most, and the Saints, the Panthers, the Jets, the Raiders. I think the Panthers are probably the next best in terms of like stability, warm weather. They got some decent weapons, obviously with DJ Moore there. They got some players on defense. I think they could use a decent amount to still be like a true playoff contender. But the Panthers are in a pretty decent situation. If I was a quarterback looking at it, Patriots, are they going to get off of Mac Jones? I don't think so. So I don't think they're in the quarterback market. We haven't heard anything about it. But we're also hearing today that the Dolphins might look to trade for Aaron Rodgers, which we'll talk about in a little bit. If you're going to make a Super Bowl run, you put Aaron Rodgers with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Oh my God. So I'm really hoping that does not happen to us because that would be our luck.
And I'm saying, like, if you put, whatever let's say he doesn't have the thumb injury or whatever, but obviously Tua took a massive leap in production. And a lot of that has to do with Tyreek. They upgraded their offensive line too. But I think a lot of it is McDaniel. I mean, give the man credit. I think a lot of it's on him.
Yep.
Imagine what that offense looks like if they do have Rodgers versus Tua, especially down the stretch too, because Tua kind of his play and, the concussions, that's not really his fault. I mean, shit happens, but Tua did look bad in a couple of those games. I do remember that Christmas Day game. I'm trying to remember what the exact coverage was, but Tua did not. I mean, the defender, whoever it was who caught the interception, baited him. Was it the Packers star corner? But whoever it was baited him. He didn't see it. And, everyone falls for it every now and then, but Rodgers is certainly one of the least intercepted quarterbacks in league history. But how much better would that offense have been? I mean, because a lot of it was like, was Tua, Tua always throws with a lot of anticipation and stuff, but was he making a lot of these really tight window throws and stuff? I mean, a lot of it was, especially early in the season when I saw like Tyreek's putting up these 190-yard games and so was
RPO and Yak.
A lot of it was Yak, man. Like a lot of like they were just making these amazing plays and whatnot.
Yep. Okay, so let's keep going on through the chat. Derek Carr, please date my sister. What's up? Oh, go that first. Love it when Kyle talks politics. Was that really politics? I don't know. Did you read the white pill yet? Joe put this towards my Patreon. Appreciate that, Jan. So we have another Patreon supporter. The only thing is, I don't know. I'll try to figure out if I can email you, Jan, in terms of just giving you a subscription, but I'm not sure how to do that necessarily. But we'll talk. But Kyle, he loves your talking politics. I'm sure some people do.
Thanks,
not.
Jan. Yeah, we did get to talk a little bit when we saw each other at the Ravens tailgate. No, I haven't read it yet, but I definitely will get to it at some point. And when I do, I will share my thoughts with you, Jan. Have you read it yet?
Me?
No, I'm talking to Jan.
Oh, no. Well, you said, have you read it? Yeah, I was like, what are you even talking about? The white pill?
Well, I was talking to Jan.
I'm reading, what's the book about the Comanches in Texas and all that stuff? I'm reading a book about Comanche Indians. I forget what it's called, but something like that. Empire of the Summer Moon or something like that. Empire of the Summer Moon. I think that's what it's called. But nonetheless, apparently Hall of Fame game is also Zach's birthday. Well, he'll be playing probably a lot. Let's see. Mekhi Becton announced he'll be starting the Hall of Fame game. JK. So we could put that in here too, Kyle, because again, we're kind of tied into.
I think Becton also announced that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame too.
Now with this, we did feel bad when he was like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear my name coming out of the tunnel next year." It's like you have to be a starter to hear that. But with that being said, Kyle, being the positive Jets fans, or aiding towards more positivity, Becton's been putting up some pictures of him, selfies in the mirror. Have you seen them?
I have. Well, I don't know if I've seen all of them, but I did see one where he's wearing a red Louisville shirt and it looks like he's in a bathroom or something.
He looks like he's a good weight right now. He's definitely not overweight. Now, the thing is, It's not like his two recent injuries they weren't caused by weight. Like they were freak injuries. It doesn't matter if you're 370 or 300 pounds. If Greg Van rolls up on you, you're going to hurt your knee. And training camp or whatever that practice was that Becton got hurt on, somebody rolled up on his knee or stepped on his knee or whatever exactly happened there. So it's not necessarily, or it's definitely not injuries that were caused by his weight. Maybe the recovery could be affected a little bit by his weight, but even with the lack or even with him losing weight, does it really better his chances necessarily towards better chances towards being a full-time player for the Jets at tackle this year? I'm not necessarily sure. Now, obviously it doesn't hurt for him to be skinny, and it's good to see that he's motivated and all this stuff. At the same time, he's going to his 4th year and he wants that fifth year contract extension or just a contract in general. So he has to ball out and he has to prove himself and he has to be skinny. But in general, it is obviously positive that he is showing that he's lost some weight. But in terms of like Becton, what do you think? And what do you think that he's legitimately or what are the chances that he's legitimately a starting tackle for the Jets next year? Like what are you looking at the tackle situation?
I think there's a decent chance that he is a starter. I mean, just look at what the tape. I mean, he is still young. It's not like he's having these back-to-back huge injuries, season-ending injuries, and he's in his 30s. He is still young. You are young. You tend to recover quicker and stuff, and you can kind of get over a huge injury. With that being said, he is a massive human being as well. So his recovery timetable might be more difficult than someone who is smaller. But I think that Joe Douglas realizes, hey, listen, I took this guy 11th overall. I don't know exactly where he was on his draft big board in terms of tackles. It seemed like he might have been 2 for them. I think they might have had the guy who went right before him, Alabama boy. I think that was going to be the pick had he been there and the Browns not taken him. Jedrick Wills, who was also your number 1. And I think he was probably my number 1 as well. Mm-hmm. And I think Joe Douglas looks at it like, hey, listen, I saw what he did as a rookie. I see the potential in him. And just because he had back-to-back injuries, as long as he comes back and he does play, but again, Joe Douglas doesn't necessarily make the calls of who actually starts. But it does seem that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are pretty much on the same page of what the vision for the team is. So I have to believe that Joe Douglas will influence Robert Saleh a lot with that. And if Mekhi Becton is working hard, because I think there are some question marks of what his work ethic was. Seemed like, and it seemed like, Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur were kind of questioning Becton and trying to prod him a little bit in that regard. So I do think that he has a legitimate chance if he is healthy.
Yeah. Now, with this being said, some people are starting to think that the Jets actually might want Dwayne Brown back. If you look at his contract, he's owed a little bit over $11 million. But if you cut him, the dead cap, I think there's like $6.3 million of dead cap. So you're only saving about $5 million cutting him. So it might just be best to keep him on the roster. So let's work from the stance where we assume Dwayne Brown is going to be back. That seems like what things are trending towards. Maybe obviously it could change, but apparently he's working out at the Jets facility and all that stuff, which doesn't seem like a guy who's necessarily going to retire. So you have him, you have Becton, you have Mitchell. What else do we need to do obviously we want to say get a stud guy at the draft, get a stud guy in free agency, but is drafting a guy in the 2nd round maybe feasible? Does it have to be a first round pick? Could you sign a guy like Andre Dillard from free agency, let Becton and Brown compete for left tackle? Whoever loses is the backup. Let Mitchell and Andre Dillard, obviously just throwing a name out there, then compete for right tackle. Like, what do you see this situation like if you have a Brown, Mitchell and Becton combo going into free agency? And then with that, some people have talked about, maybe re-signing George Fant at, I think his projected value is like $4 or $5 million right now, which I would probably sign up for as a backup for Fant. I still think he could be a good backup when he's healthy. So what do you see it as? Because it seems like we actually have 3 out of the 4 or 5 guys we may need, even though they're not necessarily ideal options.
If you're telling me I can get George Fant for $4 or $5 million, I would also re-sign him.
So what would you do then, Kyle? So if you had Max Mitchell, Fant, Brown, Becton, guy falls to at 13, are we avoiding it? A guy comes open in free agency who we really like. Do we avoid that? Because it's a possibility that they do re-sign him for $3, $4, $5 million. I would probably say I would lean towards no, but
I don't think you can ever have too many good offensive linemen. I mean, the Eagles consistently, not only do they draft offensive linemen. I mean, who's this guy that man, they just drafted him in like the 2nd or 3rd round, Cam Jurgens or something like that. Remember when we played them in the preseason, who was it? Tucker, who's doing the color commentating for the Eagles. He was just hyping him up over and over. And like they drafted that guy with an early pick, knowing that he was not going to play pretty much at all this year, barring an injury. I mean, and like if you look at the Dallas Cowboys model, they've had a good offensive line for like pretty much a decade now. And, they just keep drafting guys. But like the Eagles also develop guys and stuff. But the point is that offensive line injuries just pile. I mean, like you could play the game so smart, but guys just get rolled up on you, man. Like, you're talking 300-pound guys smashing into you constantly. And then, a 230-pound running back who's running, a 4.5 40, he could run into the back of your knee and take you out. I mean, there's just so many ways to get hurt as an offensive lineman. So I don't think you can ever have enough. So just based on that fact and the fact that it is a huge need for the Jets because they've been so injury ridden, I would, even if you have all those guys that you had just mentioned on your roster and somebody falls to you at 13, I still view it as the biggest need. And I would not shy away from taking it there. People are going to get caught up on like the sexy safety. What's his name?
Branch.
Brian Branch. And I haven't really watched him yet, but I started to see Jordan Reed put out some clips of him today. Eventually I'll start to watch him. Safety is definitely a need for the Jets too, but what do you think is honestly a bigger need? What was a bigger problem for the Jets last year? The safety was certainly a problem. There's no doubt about it. We saw it week 1 last year, how much of a problem those safeties were. But what's the bigger problem? That or, getting your quarterback killed? And listen, if your quarterback's Rodgers, so on Scott Mason's podcast, this is a couple weeks ago now, he had on some Packers guy, and the guy who's, he's clearly watched Rodgers a lot over the years. His basic thing was like, hey, listen, Rodgers, he could still make all the throws and stuff. But one thing is, his escapability, it wasn't quite there last year as it was. And it looks like his legs are starting to go a little bit. So now he could be wrong. I don't really know this guy. And he's obviously watched more Rodgers tape than I have. But it makes sense being that he is 39 years old. And one thing about Carr too is Carr, give him a good offensive line. He's not the best. He doesn't have the best pocket presence in the world, but he can certainly make all the throws in the world. You want to protect him as well, right? This isn't like, somebody like Deshaun Watson's a guy who creates a lot of plays with his legs. Either of these guys that you're getting, I mean, like Rodgers certainly did a lot more of that early in his career, but he is 39 now. So you're going to have to protect either one of these guys, considering that we get either one of them. Offensive line for me still, regardless of who the quarterback is where I want to go.
Yeah, and Branch seems like more of a box guy anyway, which I guess you could do, like a slot, like a box slot type guy, hybrid. So I don't know if you can necessarily play free, but if you're going to cut Whitehead and sign and draft him, I guess it would make some sense. But my general feel is tackle right now. Obviously, signing Brown or having Brown for 1 year or Fant for 1 year. Or even Becton, who might be for 1 year. It's not going to move me off drafting a guy at 13. Now it depends on who's there at 13. Based on what I've watched, Paris Johnson and Skronski, if they're there, I'm willing to take them. I'm very early into Broderick Jones. If he was there at 13, I don't think it's a slam dunk right now. Super, super, super raw. So I don't love reaching for him at 13.
Was he a 1 year starter?
Might have been. I watched one game of him versus was it Oregon? But I wasn't very impressed. So I haven't done like my background research into him. I know he's a sophomore though, I think so, maybe. But still, nonetheless, not super thrilled with him at 13. The only other options I can think of, maybe like an Addison or a Quinnen Johnson, somebody like that. But we'll talk about that later on. But and in terms of being positive about the Jets offensive line, since we've been mostly negative over the past couple of months, how bad was the tackle position in 2022 if Brown, Fant, and Mitchell were all healthy? It obviously wouldn't have been as bad. So maybe they're seeing bringing those 4 guys back and seeing other options out there as a viable thing to do, and they're hoping for less injuries. I don't know. They also have to re-sign McGovern if they're going to do that. There's not many guys out there who are better in free agency. Maybe there's a guy from the Browns, some of the Pochich or Pollock or whatever.
Pochich, I think his name is.
Yeah, some people talk about him. Do we know if he's a fit? I don't know. Does he re-sign the Browns? We don't know. So there's a lot to do on the offensive line, and kind of rounding out the offensive line, Kyle, just because we gotten kind of into the weeds of the tackle position, and then we'll get into the chat, and I have a few more topics I want to hit on. AVT, I know a lot of people say like, oh, the flexibility of him is great. If you bring in a guard who works out really well, if guard frees up in the draft, or he works out in training camp or free agency, we'll play him at tackle. If a tackle works out, we'll play him at guard. To me, you kind of decide on AVT before you do anything else. Like I don't want to jerk him around and say, oh, well, we got a decent guy at guard, play tackle, or oh, we got a decent guy at tackle, play guard. I feel like with AVT, because he has so much potential, you want to lock him in right now to where he's playing. Like don't jerk him around. You keep him at right guard, and he plays there for the rest of his career. Now, obviously, in emergency situations, it's great to have him, to move at tackle. But in general, I don't think you just string him along the entire offseason and see where his best fit is. Like you want to lock him down now. And in my opinion, that's that right guard.
I agree, and you also have to start eventually thinking about. Because we're talking. He's played 2 seasons now, so. You're now starting to get to the point where you're thinking about AVT's long-term future with the Jets and, re-signing him for that second contract. And you have to think about it like, if you keep moving him all the time, that might rub him the wrong way. And I know he's kind of like a not selfish guy. And yeah, I'll do whatever I need to do to help the team win or whatever. But, let's say he's not as good at tackle and he views that this is hurting his future contract negotiations with other teams because he's not getting as good at guard tape around the league and stuff. And, he's not going to get the biggest guard contract in the league. Not only for the sake of it's not best for what is best for your team, but you don't want to rub the player the wrong way either. And even though he says it might not bother him and I'm going to do whatever I'm a team guy first, whatever the team needs to win, stuff always plays in the back of somebody's mind. And so it's just something to think about. And I know that I heard that Michael and Ben had a great podcast. I think it was about a week ago now. And part of the reason I'm mentioning him is not to, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Make Nanny feel bad at all or disrespect him in any way, shape, or form. But Nanny was like kind of like open to the idea of like AVT potentially like maybe being a long-term tackle option for like the long-term future. And I completely disagree with that. And he did, to give him credit and in his defense, he did say that he thinks AVT is better at guard, but if tackle's a bigger issue, and like, I think he also is more of the belief that AVT could potentially have a high ceiling at tackle.
No.
Whereas I don't know. I just see the ceiling at guard being way higher than that of tackle.
I agree with that. And like this year's roster needs doesn't mean I'm going to solidify AVT at tackle, which in my opinion is a worse position for him for the next 5 or 6 years, because this year tackles a need. Like you want to think about AVT in 2025, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where's his best spot? Play him there.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've gone over that ad nauseum too. So I completely agree. Lock him in at right guard. Stop moving him. You did it out of necessity. It was a really shitty situation. No one expected Becton to go down, and all the other things that happened.
14 other tackles.
Yeah.
So Kyle, I'm just going to keep hitting on the topics that I have listed, and then we'll go through the chat.
By the way, do you want to get to the super chats first?
Oh yeah, super chats.
We did get a couple of them quite a bit ago. But Marvin Guns. He sent another super chat for, I believe it was 10. And he said,
we already hit on this.
I bet Rodgers reads Ayn Rand's philosophy book, The Virtue of Selfishness. It's a great book. I actually haven't read that one either.
They sent another one? They said, is it his third? I thought, okay. If you send another one, Marvin.
He did send 3 super chats, I believe it was.
Okay, Marvin, you are the man. Appreciate the support today.
Thank you, Marvin. And Jan sent another one. Yes, I read it. Fantastic book, referring to the white pill. All right, you'll have to tell me a little bit more about that. Although, I've heard about it, but, reading it and hearing about it are 2 different things. And I think that's it. I don't think I.
Okay, perfect.
Wait.
We can always have more.
I think that's it.
So in terms of talking about the Jets roster and the construction of it, some other news has come out, and it's not really news because it could be bullshit from the agents, whatever it may be. But Lazard, did you see that? Like people are saying he's going to expect $14 to $15 million a year, and Jacoby Myers could be as high as $18 million a year.
Wow.
So
I could see it being that
Corey
the
Davis,
way the wide receiver market blew up last year. It's not crazy to think that those guys would want those numbers.
Do we just keep Corey Davis for $10.5 million at this point? The only, like, I completely agree with you. The only way I see it as like, okay, maybe it's not Corey Davis is, let's say they do get Rodgers and Lazard says, okay, my market's telling me 14. I'll play with Rodgers for 12.5. Will I go up $2 million for Alan Lazard? Even though I don't feel he's a better player, but obviously he's more healthy than Corey Davis. Okay, I could do that. But in terms of just paying him outright, Lazard is not worth $14-15 million. Jacoby Myers is not worth much money. So Corey Davis at $10.5 million, I think you do it now. And you obviously hope he plays more games, because when he's in there, I think he's better than people realize. And if you get rid of him and you don't land one of the big fish in free agency, Kyle, I'm not comfortable, because I'm assuming Barrios is going to be cut. I'm not comfortable going into the year right now with, I don't know, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. Maybe I'm not speaking for you with the chat, but I don't know if you guys are comfortable with Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, and Denzel Mims as the starting 3 receivers.
No.
Now, obviously, some other guys would be added or whatever else it may be. But to me, at this point, I think you just keep Corey. You keep Corey Davis unless something unforeseen happens where a guy can be struck for good value.
I think it would be asinine to move on from him. If somebody wanted to trade for him because they thought it was great value, then maybe you consider it. But again, what are you replacing it with? And Joe, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we did a stream, you said like most teams are predominantly 11 personnel teams. I mean, you're talking like 60 to 70% of team snaps are in 11 personnel. So if that's the case, and you're telling me Denzel Mims is your third option, I mean, I'm sorry, Denzel Mims has been terrible the last 2 years.
No.
So.
In terms of some other sneaky needs and or just in general sneaky need, Kyle, what do you think about the running back position? This is something I was talking about with Buffalo Jets Fan podcast. Again, go subscribe, Patreon. Is it a sneaky need for a team who may be, or obviously with Carr or Rodgers, are trying to make a playoff push, because you don't know when Breece Hall is going to be healthy. He could be healthy in October, and if he is healthy in September, whatever it may be, you're not necessarily sure he is going to be Breece of 2022 and 2023. It might take him a year, like it did, Saquon and some other players who have come back from ACLs, unless you're Adrian Peterson, who's a savage. But you have him. You have Michael Carter, who did not look even nearly remotely the same player that he was in 2021. He looked completely different. He looked like a jag last year. Let's just be honest. He did not look good. Like as a running back too, I'm like,
honestly, there were times where he looked worse than Ty Johnson at times.
He did.
Year.
Yeah, he did. He did. Ty Johnson came in and produced more. So you have him. You have Bam Knight, who Bam Knight played really well for a game or two, but Kyle was playing well for a game or two. Mm-hmm. So we have Michael Carter, big question mark in terms of his future, in terms of how good he can be. Bam Knight was successful, and I get that a lot of that was even more so the offensive line and how bad they were run blocking than the running backs and them actually playing poorly individually. But are you comfortable with going into a playoff push, Super Bowl potentially push year, with a question mark with Breece and then 2 other question marks in Bam and Carter? And I don't think you necessarily have to get another option, but could you see that as a sneaky need? Like maybe a guy like, I don't know, Mostert pops up in free agency, or there's a guy in the 4th or 5th round who they really like. Could that be potentially a sneaky need? And I think we were asked that on our last stream. I was thinking about it for a while, and like we've been talking about receiver, we've been talking about D tackle. I think the next one might be to add another running back. Okay,
so how many hours do you think that we've talked football over podcasting, internet live streams, things like that? Take a guess. I don't know. I'm just telling you. Take a guess.
2,348.
I don't think it's that high, but it's in the hundreds though. Definitely,
yeah.
Many hundreds.
If not 1,000, it could be close to 1,000. Maybe
it could be maybe 1,000. Okay,
yeah.
So you have a pretty good idea of the way I think and some things that I repeatedly say and stuff. So I want you to take a guess how I would answer this question based.
The only thing I think you'll say is you think you should draft the running back every
exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I agree. I kind of said it. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think you should draft a running back every single year. So, is it a need for the Jets? So let's try to think about, okay, when the Jets have signed running backs in free agency to decent deals, when has it really worked out? They signed Le'Veon Bell. That didn't work. They signed Matt Forte. That didn't really work. They signed that guy from the Raiders who started his career in Carolina, and then he had them hollow point bullets. He got arrested, and I don't think he ever played it down for the Jets. He was one of the Idzik signings. I'm forgetting his name. Somebody in the chat will remember it because
hold on. Sorry. Say it. Hollow points. He
had some kind of what the nickname for them is cop killer bullets. What are they called?
Hollow. I don't know why. I know why hollow points are I guess cop killers, but I didn't hear them as cop killer bullets. But
I just remember reading a report. You're much more of a gun person than me. Although we are supposed to go shooting sometime.
They are more lethal because they spread out when they hit you. But nonetheless,
okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to give you context of the person who I'm talking about. So because I don't even remember his name.
Oh, the people are talking about Gooden, the running back.
Goodson. Mike Goodson.
Goodson, yeah. He's running back from the Raiders.
Okay,
Fast.
yeah, and people put it in the chat. Okay, Curtis Martin. That's going back a little while though.
Somebody said Chris Ivory. Swolsey said Chris Ivory.
Okay, I
love Chris Ivory.
Yeah, that was a good signing. I guess my point there is to say that running backs, more so than any other position, including cornerback, they have such a short shelf life. You beat the hell out of them. So, usually when you get that guy on that second contract, he might be good for a year or two, but they do tend to slow down. So I always think you should continue to draft running backs, get them with those fresh legs. There isn't a huge learning curve for how fast they can jump on the scene. Just look at Breece Hall, right? He hit the ground running, as did Michael Carter in both of their rookie years, respectively. But yeah, I don't know what happened to Carter. I don't think you do either. It was really strange. I mean, like, he was breaking every tackle known to man his first year. And then last year he was missing the hole. He wasn't breaking away from anybody. It was rather quite strange.
Weird.
So running back is certainly a need, and I don't think that they should draft one early. But mid rounds, even late rounds, they definitely should draft a running back. I think it's always good.
When I was asking that question, I had a feeling. I was like, I think I know he's going to say the 4th or 5th round.
And that's why I asked you, because I thought that you'd get it.
So I want to hit on a couple of other talking points, and we'll get to everybody who's on a super chat. We'll fly through those. Obviously, super chats take priority though. So one of the other kind of news factoids or whatever news that came out was Q and the extension talks. People were saying that it seems like how Joe Douglas talked about it. It seems like they're going well. So what is your updated thoughts on the Q extension? Do you have a range? I've been pretty consistently saying I think it's gonna be like $23 to $25 million a year for 4 or 5 years. Do you think he gets done, pre him holding out? Like, what's your overall feelings about the Q extension?
Joe, you're not getting him for 23 or 24 mil. It's not happening. I mean, Aaron Donald got 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Q is not Aaron Donald. I've been on that train for quite a long time, but the salaries continue to go up. So Aaron Donald got that $30 million contract. What was it, 2 years ago now? So even if Q doesn't quite get that, he's going to get close to it. He's not going to get 7 mil average per year off of it. So I think you can expect to see upwards of 25 easily. And I think it's going to be closer to 30.
Yeah, we have Bosa. Bosa's at, let's see, 27 million. Myles Garrett's at 25 million. So yeah, maybe you're looking at 26, 27. I thought those guys were a little bit lower. So 26, 27 for Q. So we're talking what, 4 years, $110 million or something of that elk, Kyle, for Q. But do you think it's going to get done before he holds out? Do you think we have a situation where, I don't think we're gonna have a Jamal Adams situation. I don't think we're gonna tag him and trade him and all this shit. He's gonna be out in Dallas. People talk, get off the man. All that shit that Jamal Adams did. But do you think it gets done? Relatively soon. And I get, and my kind of where I stand on this is they have a lot bigger fish to fry right now in terms of the quarterback position. Roster maneuvering. They're probably looking at a lot of contracts. Like, hey, listen, if we're going to get Rodgers for 2 years, we're going to restructure some contracts. We might suck a little bit in 25, 26, but we are going balls to the wall. If Rodgers here, we're restructuring a lot. So I get there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes with the Jets, but general feeling, does it get done soon?
I don't know about soon, but I mean, it could, but I would say I don't think that it gets done in the next couple of weeks. I think we'll have to wait a little bit for that one. And like you said, they might want to figure out how they're going to move some other numbers around based on who the quarterback is. That's obviously top priority. The other thing to consider with Q, it is a unique situation, which people in the chat are talking about, and you've talked about a lot, is it's a unique situation where he does have his blood brother on the team. And it's not like his blood brother is some absolute scrub who, like Mosley had his blood brother on the team, but he was like a UDFA type of guy a couple years ago. So quite different versus, having a guy who was drafted in the third. I think his brother was a 4th round pick, or was it a 3rd round pick? I can't quite remember. Who has actually produced in the NFL. And like, you might think it doesn't matter in terms of negotiations, but I think it will. So I think Q is also going to kind of monitor that, and it will play a very minor role, but nonetheless, it will play a role in contract extensions too. So I think that's another thing that kind of makes it a little bit more complicated, which is another reason why I don't think it'll get done ASAP. Quincy's probably going to want to see what numbers are getting thrown around to him in free agency and stuff first.
Now with Quincy, what just quickly on that one, what's your cutoff point for him?
Cutoff, absolutely not higher than this.
Yeah.
I'm the numbers 6 and 7 are coming to my mind, but I kind of want to say 6, not higher than 6. I'd go to 6, but maybe not above that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think 6 is a good number. I just when you look at recent and maybe we could do this on one episode, but you look at like recent free agent contracts of linebackers, it seems like some decent level players are getting signed for $2, $3, $4 million. Like we were all about Nicholas Morrow a couple of years ago on Jets X Factor and just in general. He made like $3 million, whatever it was. Look at Quan last year. Like he was a guy who was out there like, okay, maybe obviously some injury risk, all that stuff. He got $1.5 million, $2 million from the Jets. So is Quincy 2 or 3 times better than those players? I don't think so. I think he's kind of, maybe a little bit above them. So yeah, $6 million is the absolute max. Really, I think it should be like 5 is the max. But I don't know if he's going to be back. I think one of those guys is back and the other is not. But I don't think Hugh is also not going to sign with the Jets because his brother's on here. If they're offering $26 million and they're saying, hey, we haven't re-signed your brother yet, whatever. But some of the other little tidbits that I want to hit on before we get to the chat full blown for the rest of the stream for the most part. There's some rumors that Tannehill is staying in Tennessee. What do you think about that? Obviously, it's an option off the board. And I saw some questions, I'm not sure from who later, like what are your guys' options after Carr or Rodgers, which we've already talked about a lot, in terms of, I think Tannehill and Jimmy are your next guys. There's some sleeper guys out there. There's been rumors about Geno Smith. Okay. Geno Smith or, Jimmy Garoppolo or Dak Prescott, whatever. Those are all much more question marks of happening, but in the realm of like realistic possibilities or what we feel is realistic, at least at this moment. I think Tannehill was probably option 3 and Garoppolo was option 4. So option 3 may be off the board at this point, Kyle, which is obviously not ideal.
For me, it wouldn't be that way. I would have him flip-flopped if you were asking me.
In terms of what?
Who I prefer on the Jets if both were available, Jimmy or Tannehill?
Okay, yeah. No, I wasn't necessarily taking a hard stance on either one. I'm just saying options 3 and 4, out of options 3 and 4, one of them may be gone. So your backup plans may fall to Jimmy now. And if you don't get Carr or Rodgers and Jimmy goes to, I don't know, the Bucks or the Raiders, then we're left with Jameis Winston. Like, what are we doing? So it is concerning that options off the board. And like, obviously I'm much more happy with Rodgers or with Carr, but let's say it was Tannehill. Okay. It's like a C+. It's like all right. It is what it is. We'll still probably make the playoffs or be close to it. Much better than what we've had in many, many years, to be completely honest, but I'm still pretty lukewarm on it. But past Tannehill, past Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm at the point where like I'm losing my mind a little bit with how bad the Jets have failed at that position. So it's not ideal that one of the Jets' backup plans seems to be staying in Tennessee, if it's even true.
Well, I mean, so you asked me what my thoughts are about him staying in Tennessee. I think if I'm a Titans fan, I'm happy. Malik Willis looks like he's very far from being ready, so they don't really have a backup option there. I don't know what pick they have in the draft, but they're not really high enough that they have a realistic shot to really get one of these guys who could be the next great thing potentially. So, and I think that Tannehill's done a decent amount of good with the Titans. Marcus Mariota was, you have to say second overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner, wasn't he? He's kind of a bust. I know that he's not absolutely horrible like Zach Wilson, but he's not good, despite the fact that he has won a playoff game in his career. Not good at all. So I think if you're a Titans fan, you got to kind of be happy with what Tannehill's done. And I think you got to be happy that he's staying with you. In terms of me, I wasn't necessarily happy to hear that news because, like you said, it's one less option for the Jets. And I do like him a decent amount more than you do. And we don't need to get into all that right now. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, I'm gonna throw another question out there. Then I have to run to the bathroom. It just I've had a bad streak of going on streams and having to go to tinkle. But
Carr, getting old, man.
Yeah, 30 now. So I'm getting some. I saw like a gray pop up like here too, and like I already have a weird hairline. It's gonna fall apart. I'm gonna end up shaving my head soon. But
I wonder if that gray popped up because you're a Jets fan. That's stress, man.
I don't know. I got there's probably 10 spread out that I've seen just like in the mirror, brushing teeth, whatever. But Carr is visiting with some teams in Indy. Apparently he met with the Panthers and the Panthers said that they're going to meet with him again before Monday. Now, obviously that could be the Panthers doing their due diligence. There's been some rumors out there they're looking to re-sign Sam Darnold. If they re-sign Sam Darnold, are they really going to sign Darnold and Carr?
No.
Most likely it's Darnold and their pick they're in the top 10, right? So do they sign? We're hoping that they sign Darnold and then obviously draft a quarterback. But he met with them. He's meeting with them again, but he only flew to meet with the Jets and the Saints. Overall, like, what are your feelings about that? And then the fact that, or not the fact, the rumor that people are saying he's only expecting around $35 million a year, which is personally less than I would have expected for Carr to land at, especially in a free agent market. But if there's not too many suitors, and there's not too many suitors, and obviously that drives your price down. But so we heard some news about $35 million, Panthers twice, and then people are saying that the Jets meeting went very well, which obviously they're both going to say. It doesn't benefit either of them to say, no, it went terribly. Obviously for the Jets side, it's saying, oh, it went really well. Hey, Packers, pick up your shit. Aaron Rodgers, pick up your shit for a Carr. Oh, they went well. Well, hey, the Saints now hopefully are going to up their offer. The Panthers are going to up their offer. So it's beneficial for both sides. But in general, thoughts on that meeting, and I'll be back in a second.
Yeah. So like you said, it's the right thing to say for both teams. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole, when I saw the Panthers news too, okay, why is he not going for a tour in the Panthers facility? Now, obviously he could meet with the people of the Panthers organization in Indy, fall in love with that meeting and those people, and then say, hey, you know what? I'm going to fly out to your facility too. So on the one hand, it makes me think like, okay, well, maybe he prefers the Saints and the Jets more because he went and toured their facility before he met them in Indy. Isn't this kind of a strange thing where like a free agent goes and meets with a team in Indy, despite the fact that he's been in the league for like 10 years. Like I'm having trouble thinking of another example like that. I understand that it's a quarterback and quarterback is king in the NFL, but it's kind of a unique situation, but I really can't think of any other situations like that. And I don't see anyone in the chat has said that they've really seen anything like that either. We've already kind of talked about this earlier in the show in terms of what Carr's preferred destination would be. There's many reasons. I think Carr wants to win. He's had a hell of a lot more losses in his career than wins. There is the big question of, well, a lot of people, if you just hear about all across the league, anyone who knows why the Jets finished 7-10 last year, it was because of injuries and mostly quarterback play. That's why. But everyone kind of views them as a team that's on the rise. The Saints, it's hard to kind of view them as a team on the rise, being that, they have a coach who has already failed as a head coach in one other stop. When I believe, is it Dennis Allen? When Dennis Allen was the Raiders head coach, when he was a young head coach 10 some odd years ago, he failed there. This past year, did he have Drew Brees? Right? No. Did he have Sean Payton anymore? Was the roster as good anymore? No, it wasn't. But you have to kind of still view last year as somewhat of a failure. The Panthers organization, they've been going through a quarterback carousel. Frank Reich, he just was fired as a head coach. Now he might like Carr or whatever. Apparently he has a lot of people have been talking about how, Frank Reich, all his quarterbacks are like, 6'4" and over or whatever. And, Carr's 6'2". So does he kind of fit the Frank Reich mold of a quarterback? I don't know. So, I don't know how much you heard, Joe. Joe, you have your AirPods in, so you did hear me, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, it is odd. I've never seen a quarterback go and visit, but then again, how often are guys like cut and then have all that time, during the combine to really go and visit? But yeah, in general, it is odd. Quick other tidbit we'll hit on. It was thrown out there on Twitter and stuff, so I just want to hit on it really quickly. The Packers are creating cap space. They created nearly $40 million in cap space by restructuring the contracts of Aaron Jones, Jaire Alexander, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark. Is there any chance that you think they're trying to make one last run with Rodgers? Because I get that they could be, maneuvering their cap for years to come, whatever it may be. But seeing that they created $40 million in cap space by restructuring, usually teams restructure and push money down the road if they're trying to make a run. So do you think there's any link to maybe them hearing from Rodgers or getting the inkling that he might be coming back to the Packers, and now they're going to say, hey, well, screw it. If we're going to lose Jordan Love, I guess we're going to go, kind of balls deep here and make a push to the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers?
Okay, so in any organization, not everybody's on the same page. There's always going to be disagreements. Joe Douglas likes to talk about we've had great conversations in the building and great debates and back and forth and blah, 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 blah. You have to believe that there are many people in the Packers organization that want Rodgers to return. Hey, listen, how great would it be to have this guy play his whole career with one team, right? He won us a Super Bowl, 4-time MVP. A lot of the fans love him. I know some fans are tired of him or whatever, but also like if you're the Packers, do you want to give him up and then he goes and wins a Super Bowl elsewhere like Tom Brady did a couple of years ago? Because and listen, I used to listen to a lot of Patriots podcasts, and I certainly know a lot of Patriots fans. In my time from doing an AFC East podcast, I got to meet a lot of people and have conversations with them and stuff. And I'll tell you this, so many of them were heartbreaking that they could not work it out to keep Tom Brady for a couple more years, knowing that he still had stuff left in the tank. And a lot of them were happy that he won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, but I'll tell you, even more of them were just so upset with the Patriots organization. Man, we could have made this fucking work. If we got him, more help at receiver and in certain other positions, and Bill spent more in free agency, and Bill drafted better, and Bill was just willing to pay him an extra couple million a year, we could have made this work and won yet another championship ring with Tom Brady. Instead, he had to go win his 7th and final ring with another team. There's a lot of Patriots fans that feel that way. And I think that if you're the people in the Packers organization, I'm assuming that a lot of them feel the same way about Rodgers and him potentially going somewhere. And the other thing too with that is supposedly some people are saying that the Packers really believe in Jordan Love. And I have to believe that there's a decent amount of people in the organization that do believe that. I mean, you traded up to draft him in the first round, knowing that you still had Rodgers, who was still playing at an MVP-like level. But at the same time, when the guys come in the games, has he really been that good? Now, you see him in practice every day, but there's a big difference between what a guy does in practice versus what he does in actual games. And, you could trade Rodgers away and maybe get a first-round pick or a couple picks or whatever, which is great and all. But, even if Jordan Love does work out, the problem there is one of the reasons you draft a young quarterback that you love is you get him on the rookie deal. Well, Jordan Love and that whole rookie deal thing, I mean, that's running out. So you don't really have that luck there. So I have to believe that there are a decent amount of people in the Packers organization that don't want to move on from Rodgers. The question is which people in the organization are going to win that debate? And you have to believe that Matt LaFleur has one of the biggest says because, he is the head coach. He's the one who's going to be, designing a lot of the plays. He doesn't necessarily call the plays, but, he's designer of the offense and such. He's going to be working with the quarterback on a daily basis. So, I mean, I didn't know that information that you said about restructuring Kenny Clark's contract, but I would not be shocked if he went back to the Packers for the reasons that I just said.
Yeah, it seems like it's Packers or Jets at this point. It doesn't seem like he's going to retire. To me, I think the two betting favorites would be Packers, Jets retirement, and then somewhere else most likely. But people are talking about like it's the me, and I think that's part of the battle between Rodgers and the Packers. The Packers want to make it look like, oh well, he's the one who wants to move on, and vice versa. But with that being said, while acknowledging that, I don't think they restructure a bunch of contracts for immediate game, like they want him back or anything like that, because obviously that's a big decision to restructure millions of dollars. Now with him too, there was somebody, I don't know exactly who it was. People on the stream or on the chat could probably tell me, but there's a guy on Twitter who put it out there who has some connection to him. I think it was maybe his backup quarterback said that he sees Rodgers either staying with the Packers or going to the Jets.
So Kurt Bankert, that guy?
I think that's who it was.
Okay.
I guess he was asked on a podcast or some way he was asked about it, and he said he could see him with the New York Jets or the Dolphins, and people are like, "Oh my God, does he have inside information?" I'm sure he's not telling Bankert, whatever his name is, any information, but that was a rumor, and there's also a rumor that the Panthers are also looking into Rodgers, but could that be due diligence? I think it should be for any team, because if they're going to say, "Hey, it's a 4th round pick for Rodgers," okay, shit, we'll take it, But so every team's going to check in. But what are your thoughts about the Dolphins potentially, and then the Panthers checking in on Rodgers as well?
I'll say this about the Dolphins. So their owner loves to make a splash. He's tried to do that for a long time. He tried kicking the tires with Peyton Manning, right? I mean, and he's got a lot of money too. So he's willing to, do whatever it takes. Flores, he fired him, even though, Flores had done a lot to turn that team around. He definitely wants to win. You also have to consider with the Dolphins, they got fined a 1st-round pick and I believe then some for tampering with Tom Brady. The fact that they wanted to go out and get Tom Brady for several years and made several attempts to do it shows just how much they want to win, and they're willing to get a big name quarterback in order to do that. And you also have to consider too, they traded, what was it, it was a first round pick, I believe, for Bradley Chubb right at the trade deadline. So the Dolphins are all in, man. I'm not much of a poker guy, but they're pushing all their chips in. So I could definitely see that. I mean, we haven't really been hearing much of it. And I know McDaniel, he's dressed to the nine at the combine and everything, and he's making his jokes and stuff. And he's saying how much he loves Tua. And I heard this interview with him sometime later in the season. He's like, the most rewarding thing of my job has been developing Tua into the man and the quarterback that he is. It's been so rewarding for me.
Is that exactly how he talks? I don't know if I've ever heard of that. Because
go listen to him. I mean, like, I'm not saying I'm doing a good impression, but I'm trying to.
I don't know. It seemed like you're doing okay.
Go watch one of his press conferences. Right. But anyway, I mean, like, this is the stuff he's saying to the media, but they could all be part of the game. And then they could just say, like, if they do go and get Rodgers, they'd be like, hey man, we had this once in a lifetime opportunity, and we had to go and do it. We still love Tua, but we had to go and do what we think's best for the team. So, I mean, I don't know. I could potentially see the Dolphins for all those reasons I said.
Yeah. And things can fly out of nowhere. Like, I don't know what the day was, Kyle. Let's say, I don't know, March 24th at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. In 2022. Were we thinking that we're going to hear that Tyreek Hill might be coming to the Jets? We had no idea, and those next 2 hours were absolute fucking chaos. And obviously we lost into the Dolphins, which hurts even more, but nonetheless, the team can pop up out of nowhere. And the Panthers, I think it's more due diligence. But we'll see. Again, hopefully by my next stream, which I'm supposed to be solo for. I'm assuming that if Rodgers news breaks, obviously we're going to go live. I'll go live as soon as it breaks, at least within a couple of hours, and hopefully Kyle can join me, but we'll see. Kyle, let's get to the chat, though, because we were quite a bit behind, and we might have to end a tiniest bit earlier today. You guys heard Rodgers say retreat was difficult? The only thing he acknowledged dragging people along and then said, hey, let's drag them along at the same time. I think his decision to play last year came around this time a little bit before free agency, and now he's kind of doing the same thing while also saying that he doesn't want to, or in the past saying that he didn't want to drag it out as long as it did last year. So you're like 6 days before you decided last year. So you're doing what you said you didn't want to do. So it's like, but I didn't really see many, I didn't listen to the podcast about it because we knew that people would just put out the quotes that had any relation to the Jets, but I didn't see him say it was difficult. Now, maybe mentally difficult,
Could also be, I mean, I wish I knew the exact context of whatever his comments were, but I mean, part of his retreat was to clear his mind, to have clarity about whatever his decision is going to be. And, knowing about what you want to do with your future, whether you want to make tens of millions of dollars and put your body on the line again, or whether or not you want to go to a different team, that might not necessarily be an easy decision. So was he talking about the difficulty of making a decision? Because that seems like it wouldn't be an easy decision to make. So I really don't know the context.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. You want to hear the context. You want to hear like how his voice is saying it. Like he's like, oh my God, it's so difficult. Like just being locked in a room is so hard. Like, yeah, obviously there's people who are literally like they're slaves out there right now. But so yeah, it's not difficult, but could you say in the same breath, like, oh, that was a difficult decision, like it was difficult deciding there. So the context is important to that. So I don't really know. This QB search sucks. Word is Carr to New Orleans. I have not heard that, Simon. So maybe, I don't know. Usually I follow people who are usually pretty plugged in. I'm not saying I have connections or anything like that. I'm just saying I only take the words out of like Adam Schefter's mouth. So who's saying Carr's going to New Orleans? I don't know. Is a Buffalo Jet fan pod all inclusive with the X? Yeah. So right now it's Patreon. We're going to work on tying it into Jets X Factor and getting both in one. But not right now, Swolsey, but it will be. And if you subscribe, then we'll transfer everything when we have to. But it will most likely be a part of Jet X in some way. So let's see, keep going on here. Devontae left Rodgers. He ain't following him. The Raiders seem like they're going to be out anyway. That's what people are saying at this point. Raiders just ruled themselves out. They're picking a quarterback at 7. I'm saying, but do you think general feel, Kyle, do we lose the 13th pick for Rodgers? Do you think we have to trade it? I don't think so. Based on everything I'm hearing and the Raiders being out of it being the Packers or the Jets, I think they're starting to lose maybe a little bit of leverage and they're playing a little bit of the media game. So I think it's going to be, a 2 and a conditional first next year, like a 2 and a 2. I don't think they are giving up 13 though.
I was thinking earlier on, because we've been hearing Jets Rodgers for over a month now and well over. And initially I was thinking, yeah, it has to be at least that. But then I started thinking, the more I started thinking, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of suitors and stuff. And the other thing to consider too, and I know that the Jets had more draft capital last year, but the other thing you have to consider too is, remember, Joe Douglas, if the Jets were going to get Tyreek Hill, it was not going to require the 10th overall pick. Joe Douglas was willing to give up, several second rounders and stuff and a bunch of other picks and stuff, if I remember correctly, which, could have been the equivalent of, something like the 10th pick, but it wasn't going to be that. So I don't know that, Joe Douglas might give up something like, a second this year and a second the following year or something like that. But I do think that if there is an offensive tackle that's within sight of the 13th overall pick, Joe Douglas is not going to want to give that up so easily. So I don't think it necessarily will require that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the other thing you have to consider too, like trading for Rodgers and that contract, I know the Packers are going to take a cap hit with that, if I'm not mistaken, but that is a big, massive contract that you're absorbing. So
I think he's acknowledged a couple of times that he's going to have to restructure that. So I think Rodgers knows that that's not going to be the contract he's going to stay on. Yeah.
So, but you are trading for a guy who's 39 contract. So I don't necessarily think it'd have to require that pick.
But yes, I haven't looked at, I feel like this year, or this time last year, I knew so much more about the prospects because I'd already dug pretty deeply into them by the combine. And I just don't know anything this year. It's just, do we even have that pick, which I'm assuming we will. And it's a lot easier to look into prospects when you have, a top 10 pick than 13, because we have no idea who can fall there. We don't know if the tackles are going to fall there. We don't know if it's going to be a receiver. We don't know who they're signing in free agency. So I'm a little bit out of the loop with the draft stuff, or I'm a lot of it out of the loop with the draft stuff, minus the first 3 tackles. Kev Chada says, you guys see Jalen Carter was issued a arrest warrant. Yeah, he had some charges about leaving the scene of a car crash and racing and a bunch of other things with the Georgia player who died a couple of months ago. With like this, she was like a I don't know what she was. She was something on the Georgia football team. It was a female who he was with. She was like a GA or something. I don't know exactly.
Did he crash the car and she died because of him crashing the car?
Well, no. So it seems that he was racing with the other Georgia players, like a backup offensive lineman or a backup defensive lineman, and he was in the car with the other female, and they crashed their car. They both passed away. They both died, and nobody really knew much about it. And now it seems that their videos came out, or surveillance or whatever happened, came out that Jalen Carter was racing with the guy who crashed and killed both. Him and the female passenger, and the blood alcohol was like a 1.8, I think, which is obviously more than double the legal limit. So, or 1.8, not a 1.8 technically, but. So if he fell with 13, Kyle, do you take him? Obviously, with this question, it's there is so much that we do not know behind the scenes with this, with the interviews, with how he is as a person. Has he had problems in the past? And people talk about the combine, the underwear Olympics, and it doesn't really matter. I think in general, with the combine, you can hurt yourself or propel yourself, but it has to be really kind of almost an outlier to what people expected your numbers to be. But in general, I think it's more for the interviews and the measurements and all that stuff. And not having access to those interviews and how they feel about him and his history. Can I speak on Jalen Carter and him being picked at 13? I can't. With that being said, if you got a player like Jalen Carter at 13, obviously everything was fine off the field. The dude is a dominant defensive tackle. And if you add him and Quinnen Williams to JJ Huff and whoever else, like Jesus. But there's so much background information that I can't truly answer that. If I were to answer that, I would just be lying to you. So
that's pretty much my same answer. It's like, okay, people fuck up. Shit. When I was 17, I got into an accident and I didn't even know that you could get a ticket for leaving the scene of an accident. And I did, like a dumbass. Now nobody got hurt or anything like that, but I got a ticket for reckless driving. That it was dropped in court or whatever. But thanks to my lawyer, I did lose my license for 45 days. And, I got a ticket for leaving the scene of an accident too. Now, granted, I was 17. He's what, 21 or something like that? Or how old 20, was he when it happened? 20. 22. Is he necessarily a horrible person for doing? Now, I wasn't drunk. Was he? People do dumbass things. Is he necessarily a horrible person for doing something really stupid?
Yeah, like racing his car and stuff. Like, let's not act like when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, I might not have been, racing with friends at red lights, but the difference is he probably is in a Lambo and I'm in a, Nissan Xterra. So I wasn't going as fast, but
yeah. So my problem is like, or my thoughts are, is like, I've been hearing this whole thing that he's got character issues, and it's like, does he have character issues, or is it one mistake that he made, albeit a big mistake? This is a big mistake, no doubt about it. But is it like a one-off type thing? And is he a good kid otherwise? Because the talent on the field from what I've seen, and I haven't seen a ton of prospects, but I've seen more of him than I have a lot of other prospects. And I even saw him, like I saw Brandon Thorne putting up a lot of his clips from the previous football season. And he was dominating, I believe, as a true sophomore then. I mean, like just ridiculous amount of power and strong hands and the way that he moves guards and stuff. So if he fell to 13 and, the character box is more or less check off, I mean, like, if you're telling me I got an offensive lineman who I have some concerns over, and like, he seems to be a good prospect, and maybe you could mold him into a above average to good starter in the league, but you're not necessarily as sure about it, versus Jalen Carter, who's like, your evaluation of him is like maybe even better than what it was for Quinnen Williams. I'm sorry, I'm going to go with Jalen Carter. I'm going to go with the more sure thing. He just slid because of off the field concerns, but I wasn't super concerned with it.
Yeah. Rico says, what is the Jets' plan if they lose both Rodgers and Carr? Oh, kind of hit on this already. Pray that Lamar Jackson becomes available, which I'm still probably not doing. Settle for Jimmy. Yeah, it's probably Jimmy G or Tannehill.
Did you see Bateman's tweet today?
Yeah, like criticizing the Ravens organization Acosta. Yeah, I did. Now, still, we talk about the Lamar Jackson thing a lot, and just in terms of fit, the contract, the player he will be, what you're paying him, I just don't see it as a realistic possibility. So if they miss out on one of these guys, it's most likely Jimmy G, or do they do something? Do they make a move for freaking Geno Smith? I have no idea. Let's not even live in that world right now. Let's not do that. We're so close to it. I think they're landing one of them. I don't want to put myself in a terrible place right now. I can't do that. Let's figure that out if we get there. Let's see. Philosophy. Yeah, and it's just Solzy, you hit on this. If the Packers don't send Rodgers where he wants to go, he can hold them hostage, all the leverage. He doesn't have a no trade clause, but he kind of does, because if he gets traded to a team and retires, then obviously it just ends it. So he doesn't necessarily have one on paper, but he kind of does have a no trade clause. So he's not going anywhere he does not want. That is for sure. JD made it clear we're waiting on Rodgers, but love Carr. And that could be a thing where you saw how Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh were like blowing up about Carr and how much of a leader he is and how great of a person, how good of a quarterback he is. He can be a Hall of Famer, all this stuff. It feels like they might really want Carr, and Woody Johnson's maybe the one pushing for Aaron Rodgers, or maybe they're doing their due diligence on Rodgers. But it seems like the coaching staff and the Jets organization in general will be very happy with Carr. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just keep scrolling down. I don't find anything that really pops out. Again, I'm an hour behind on the chat because we always get into stuff and I don't want to cut it short. Would Patriots sneak sign Carr? They know that I don't think they would just hurt us in terms of signing Carr. I think they're going to give it another go with Mac Jones at this point, right? Like if Zach Wilson showed as much as Mac Jones had in his first year or two, which I'm not saying is a lot, but we might hold out some hope that there's a year 3. That of a rise.
Could be that Josh Allen leap. Josh Allen's leap from year 2 to 3 was mediocre.
Sam Darnold's huge third-year leap that we were all talking about, right? Yeah. The only problem is that ended after like a quarter, and I was like, "This is we're fucked. We're fucked." He's not it. So every team in the NFC South is a better situation. Is in a better. That is not true at all. That is, if you're talking about in terms of the competition they have to play to get to the playoffs, yes, but the Falcons are a barren roster. The Saints are becoming a barren roster with absolutely no cap space. The Panthers have some solid players, but the Jets have more talent. So the Jets team is better than all those teams for him to go to. Are they in a better division to win and go to the playoffs? Yes, but they're not in a better situation. It depends on how you define situation, I guess, right? So. Isn't Michael Thomas? I think Michael Thomas accounts for like $60 million on their cap next year. Michael Thomas. Who hasn't played really in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So. Blake, if we get Rodgers, we can get Lazard and Bakhtiari. I could see Lazard. And the thing with Bakhtiari is he's still under contract, and he's played like 10 games in 2 years, Kyle. So would you have any interest in a supremely banged up David Bakhtiari? Even though he's 30, 31, he's still, I don't know if he's still good at post injuries. He was a very, very good player, but what are you getting?
I mean,
up
if I could sign him straight up, but you're talking about trading picks and stuff now.
Yeah, absolutely not. He's been injured. So, how can Dolphins afford this Armstead at left tackle, Chubb, Hill, Byron Jones contract? Yeah, it's really just by pushing every single cap hit you have until the next into 2020, 2024,
Tua is on a rookie contract.
Tua is on a rookie contract, and then you just take those hits in later years and you go for the Super Bowl. Like if you really want to make a push, you can make that push for 3, 4, 5 years. But it's going to hit you eventually. We're seeing that happen with the Saints right now.
Yep.
The cap is real, Kyle. It's a little bit more. You can manipulate it more than some people previously thought, but you could be very competitive and offer massive contracts to a bunch of players for 4 or 5 years. But then those next 2-3 years are going to be not ideal. Look at the Jets and what they did.
The Chiefs, by the way, the Chiefs did it for very many years too. They're always up against the cap every single year. It worked out for them. They just won another Super Bowl. I remember. This is not totally related, but it's a little bit related. My cousin, who's a huge Packers fan, and he's a huge Aaron Rodgers fan, although I think he's a little sick of all the crap too, or supposed crap with that. But anyway, after the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl and they signed Mahomes to that mega deal, he's like, oh my God. And it was a 10-year contract. And dude, honestly, it's such a bargain. He's like, they're going to kill themselves with that in the future. They're not going to be competitive. They're not going to be able to sign other guys. So I was like, his name's Craig. I was like, Craig, are you kidding me? Do you know how good Mahomes is and stuff? They'll find other ways. Some of these guys, Kelsey or Hill, is as good as they are. They're more expendable than someone like Mahomes. Anyway, Sure enough, look at his contract now compared to some of these other guys like the Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed deal and stuff. I mean, Mahomes, and you still got him for what, 6-7 more years on that huge deal? Yeah, that is crazy. Such a bargain. I'm just crazy. Like to say, Craig, if you're watching this, I don't think you are. You lost that debate. You owe me an apology.
June Smith said, I'd rather have an above average quarterback with a chip on his shoulder than a diva quarterback at the end of his career. Yeah, like personality wise, like I want Carr, but I understand going for the championship with Rodgers if he can return to form. Obviously, and be what he was in 2021, 2020. And even like last year, he didn't have great numbers, but he still would have had one of the better Jets seasons in our entire history. So I think he'll be pretty good for the Jets regardless. But let's see. Tua sucks, let's be honest. Dolphins have no. The thing with, like, if I was a Dolphins fan, quickly on that, I think you got to move past Tua just because of the concussions. It's just how often do you see guys bounce back?
The most of that majority of that fan base loves Tua.
Yeah, I know.
I do follow a decent amount of them still from my days doing AFC East Bros podcast, and I'm telling you, they love him, and there's a reason why he got so many MVP votes. It's Dolphins fans rabid voting for him and shit. They love him. Yeah. He's a nice kid too. You want to talk personality? He's a nice young man, but quarterback, I don't think he's that great.
Michael says, are you comfortable going to the season with Brown, Becton, and Mitchell's or tackles? Yeah, we talked about this before. I at the minimum,
I'm not.
At the minimum, they're bringing back Fant or Dillard and drafting like another mid-round guy. But still, even with Brown, Becton, Mitchell, I would still like to draft a tackle. At 13 is still my general feel right now. If there's a tackles available in free agency, sign them, because listen, Brown is 38 years old, 39 years old, was injured last year. Becton hasn't played in 2 years. Mitchell was okay for a 4th round rookie, and that's about it. So I'm not comfortable with any one of those really this year or years going forward. So that's not going to rule you out of investing in a long-term tackle at this point.
Yeah.
Joe, would you trade your dog and your left nut to the Chiefs for Mahomes? Realistically, no, I wouldn't really give my left nut for anything, but figuratively, sure. Like I would give a lot, but my dog and my nut, I think I'd give my dog up before my left nut. Yeah. Sorry. I love my dog, but I don't know if my left nut's going anywhere. But no, I'm not giving up my nuts for Patrick Mahomes. But I really like him for 10 years, sure. But it's not.
You'd have to deal with his brother though.
I would, but I would get over it pretty quickly if Mahomes was taking snaps under, I guess it would be Connor McGovern, right? So, no, Daniel, I would not. Kyle, would you give your left nut up for Patrick Mahomes? Do you think you'd be willing to go for that thing?
No, not that. I don't have a dog. I used to have a ton. My parents, I might have said this before in a stream. My parents actually breed beagles. So my dad loves his dogs. He breeds beagles and he actually hunts with them. He hunts rabbits with them. I wonder if he would give up one of his dogs that he loves tremendously in order to keep Mahomes, because he's a Chiefs fan. That'd be the real.
I don't think you could, right? Like, could I give my dog up? Like, could I just let them just open the door one day? Oops, he ran out and got hit by a car. Like, could I do that? Well, maybe if I could give it for adoption. I don't know. I got to think about it. I'd have to go to a darkness retreat. It'd be a very difficult decision for me to. I don't want to string you guys along, but I'm going to string you along about my decision. So let's. Tom.
Well, what's he supposed to say if he hasn't made a decision yet? What is he honestly supposed to say? I'm not. It's not my intention to string you guys along. I don't want to be doing this, but I'm not ready to make a decision yet. I mean, like, I understand. Like, it sounds a little contradictory, and it's like, yeah, well, you are stringing us along, but like, what is he supposed to say?
If the mind's not made up, it's not made up. It's just you definitely know he likes the attention. Swolzy Joe reminded me how you graded out Becton for his rookie season. I thought he played well. Like I thought he was a solid tackle. So as a starter, decent to solid, but people talk about Becton's rookie year like he, was some all pro ball level tackle, but I think he gave up 6 or 7 sacks. So he was good.
7 was the number that we came to 2 weeks ago when we did our last stream. Together.
7. Okay. So 7 sacks is a decent amount. And, there was games like he was getting beat up by Cleveland Farrell for the Raiders. There were some games he got beat up a little bit. So
Mario Addison in both Bills games.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought he played well. I don't think he was some elite guy, but do I think that in year 2, he would have been better than year 1 for sure. So do I think Becton can still be a solid tackle in terms of just, obviously assuming he's going to be healthy? Yes, I do. But he wasn't Tristan Wirfs' rookie year. He was good, but let's see. Wirfs was the pick. Let's go. Okay. Post-June cut for Brown is better. Yeah, I think you are right, Finger, like Jets fan. You can figure that on some websites. So I could be wrong about that. Similar to Mosley, they actually want to cut CJ, which seems unlikely. Yeah, there'd be a lot of dead cap in the future for Mosley. Brown should be penciled a starter, in starter. Anything else we get out of Becton or rookie is a cherry on top.
Pencil Brown as a starter? No thanks.
Yeah, not with Rodgers and with Carr when you're trying to make a Super Bowl run. I don't want to pencil him in. But honestly, at this point, Kyle, it might be Brown versus Becton at left tackle and a rookie versus Max Mitchell or rookie versus Mitchell versus Fant. But the Jets aren't going to go out there, and we're not getting Trent Williams and Orlando Brown as our tackles next year. Like we're going to have an offensive line that's somewhat weak at potentially one tackle spot, left guard, and with, I think, Connor McGovern, who will be back as a okay center. I don't think the Jets offensive line is ever going to get to an upper tier line, but I think with adding a tackle, having Brown, like we could be an okay one.
I don't know. Maybe if they start actually getting lucky. I mean, Joe Douglas has had so much bad luck there. I mean, also think about, I'm forgetting his name, but the Clemson. No, excuse me. He wasn't Clemson. He had a good game against Clemson. Who was the guard that we took? He played left tackle in college, but we drafted him to play a guard. Yeah, Cam Clark.
I liked his film a lot, man.
His film was good. His film was good. There's a reason why he was a 4th round draft pick. It's just he had a neck spine injury and, he's done for his career. Like that could have, like, you want to talk about like, okay, that's a risky, all right, you're taking a guy from a smaller school. But there's a lot of cases of smaller school offensive linemen working out, right? You think about Ali Marpet, right? He was a 3rd rounder, I believe, from a really small school, but tested off the wazoo. And he ended up, hitting his potential. Like if Joe Douglas had hit on Cam Clark, we might be talking, and Cam Clark was a legit guard, and we didn't have to have Laken Tomlinson, 30-something years old, on that big, huge-ass contract right now. I mean, the Jets' offensive line might be in a very different spot right now. So I mean, like, some of it's luck too.
If you don't sign Brown, he doesn't get injured 2-3 weeks later. If Fant doesn't get injured, if Becton doesn't get injured, like he's had really, really piss poor luck, like you've said. So I think it's good to point out. People talk about Fant saying he's disgruntled. I think he's more disgruntled. I agree with more of the disgruntled part of this comment than his play decline. The thing with Fant is he was injured all last year, so he sucked. Yeah, but if he's fully healthy this year, could he be better? I think he could be at least at the minimum, a solid backup. So if
his pass pro took a huge dive last year, and I have to believe a lot of that is like, so he was playing all right tackle last year. He didn't play any left tackle. That was all Dwayne Brown. Which knee was hurt?
Right knee.
Okay. So I think you're right that it was the right knee.
I could be wrong. Do not quote me on that though, because I'm not even 90%.
If he's kick sliding and he's kicking with that right leg, there's a lot of knee bending and stuff that goes into that. And I mean, like if you want to look at his pass protection, and yes, we've always said he's been better at left tackle versus right. That's no secret to anybody. But I have to believe that the injury was a huge reason his play dipped so much. He's never been great in the run game. Never.
Mm-hmm.
So
no. Mer Chai says first resign Q before talking about extending ABT. I don't know if this is in relation to us. We're talking about before.
Well, I was talking about you have to start thinking about it in the near future. Like,
yeah, we're not talking about extending him this year. He's going to get extended probably next year. But in general, you got to figure out his position. You can't just say, oh, we got to figure out Q, ABT. Maybe you'll play center this year. You haven't played there. Give him a spot. So good points on ABT. I agree. Keep him at guard and just tackle. Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, agree with us. Lazard is a great blocker too. I cannot speak on if he's a great blocker or not. Just because he's big doesn't mean he's a great blocker. So I don't know if he has that dog in him. Corey Davis is a good blocker. He's definitely a good blocker. CB is a fair value. I completely agree. Sneakers to boots. $10.5 million. What are you getting in free agency? If Lazard is 14, if Jacoby Myers is 18, 17, 16, whatever he's going to be, what are we getting? DJ Shark for $10.5 million? What are we getting? So
I'm sorry. I wouldn't. You just keep him. The only if you're talking, I got a guy. If I could have all of those guys you just mentioned healthy for one game, I would take Corey Davis over those guys anyway. Right? Like Jacoby Myers is a pretty good blocker. That people say Lazard's a good blocker. I can't really speak to that as much. Chark, I really don't. I think he's the worst out of all those guys. But I do think that as a straight receiver, Corey Davis is better than all those guys. I mean, Corey Davis was the 5th overall pick. Really, the biggest knock on him his whole career has been his injuries. And if you're talking $10.5 million for Corey Davis versus 18 for Jacoby Myers, I mean, it's not even a conversation I'm willing to have.
NJZ says 3 super chats. Rich people taking over every facet of society. Poor people can't afford to talk football. I don't know if that's I don't know if he's joking around or not, but yeah,
I think it might be a little bit of a joke.
I would say obviously got to make those priority, but look, I just hit on that comment.
And the funny thing about that is part of the reason he might be saying that is because there have been many times in the past where we didn't value super chats enough, like where we didn't we got a super chat, let's bump that up the list of priority, where we just kind of took them in order. So maybe he said it for that reason.
Jets fans always want to get rid of people. Yeah, exactly. It's get rid of Corey Davis, get rid of Connor McGovern. Okay. Yeah, get rid of Connor McGovern. Oh, this guy in the 3rd round, Josh Smith from Oregon State University. He's definitely going to work. Okay, well, Josh Smith is now gone in the 3rd round. He I don't know, he crashed his car or whatever. Now he's in the 6th round. You're not taking him. And this guy in round 2. Who says he's going to be there? Who says it's not a bust? Like you can't just say, we'll replace him with this guy in the 3rd round because I know exactly what I'm talking about the draft. Like because you heard about him for 45 seconds on some draft website that might not know what they're talking about either. I don't know. Happy tanking. What is James Robinson's contract status with the Jets? He's not coming back. Right. Yeah. He's not coming back. He came the here. The dude didn't even dress. He got mad. Yeah. He was getting upset with his carries, whatever. And then he didn't dress for the last 3 or 4 weeks. He's not going to resign. He'll be back with somebody else or he'll be with somebody else. So, but he doesn't have a contract. He's not under contract. I so wanted Amon-Ra St. Brown instead of Michael Carter. That would have been a good pick. I'm not going to lose all hope on Michael Carter at this point, Kyle, but, I would say I'm much more negative on him going to year 3 than I was going from year 1 to year 2. I thought he'd be a legitimate starting level, low tier running back or really, really good backup post his rookie season. And now I'm questioning if he can be number 2.
We were so high on what we saw from him his rookie year that when we had signed Breece Hall, who we also really liked his rookie tape, his college tape. We were saying, when we were doing like our off-season superlatives and all that kind of stuff and position rankings, kind of those theme shows, as you say, we were saying that the Jets had a top 10 running back unit in the league without even seeing Breece Hall take an NFL snap yet. And a big part of that is because we knew the potential Breece Hall had and what we already did see from Michael Carter in year 1. Do we even say that now, despite the fact of what Breece Hall did as on pace for rookie of the year? Michael Carter took such a huge dip that it's like, what the hell happened?
Yep. Yeah. Hi guys. Joe would love to go to go over Carr tape. If they were to sign him, I would probably share some plays. I'm sure Kyle and I would reference, his mobility or his deep accuracy or whatever. And we'll bring up the play and talk about it a little bit. So I'm definitely planning on doing that. Rico says, even though the tight end position is not a great need. This year's tight end prospects are very strong. Today's luxury is tomorrow's need. Is there a really famous person who said that? Today's luxury is tomorrow. Is that Joe Douglas? Joe Douglas might have said that, actually. Not a really famous person. You can get a playmaking tight end in the third round. I don't think it'd be high round. Like third round might be a little bit too high, but let's say there is a guy in the fourth or fifth round who they really like. Could you stash him as your tight end 4 for this year and then hope he could be tight end 3 next year? Like, to me, Uzomah's not back after this next season. I just don't see that. So I see the 2024 room looking like Conklin, Ruckert, and then could you draft another tight end in the fifth round or something like that, and he can work out. Sure, but there is also guys out there talking about the Jets drafting a tight end at 13 or in the second round, which I think is absolutely crazy considering all the investment they put into that position. So first, second round, absolutely not. Talking about the fourth or fifth, okay, we can talk about it there.
Yeah, I mean, you really took the words right out of my mouth with Uzomah. Like, he impressed me a little bit more than what I thought he was going to do when we initially signed him, but I still think I thought it was easily an overpay, which you generally do in free agency. And part of me, like when I saw Ruckert laying the wood on some of those blocks in that final game of the season against the Miami Dolphins, I really started to think, why didn't this guy play more in this year? And a lot of it to me is probably like, well, we got so much money invested in these guys. That's really the only reason I can really think, and that Ruckert's still learning. But
I wonder
if we're talking potential, Ruckert does have a lot more potential than someone like Uzomah, and you could even argue that he maybe has more potential than Conklin. Conklin certainly was a little bit disappointing last year. There's no doubt about that. So you could move on from either one of those guys. Uzomah, just based on the contract, and he's certainly got a lot less touches and stuff.
I'm keeping Conklin for like $7 million a year.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like,
he'll be much better. I like he had like 2 drops in 4 years with the Vikings. He comes here 2 games. He's like 2 drops and a fumble. It's like of course. But he's a better player than people realize. I think he's one of the Jets who's underrated to me. And that's interesting to see what happens with the Jets in their fullback position. Can Ruckert fill that? Because if you look at the Titans tape and the run game and just in general, they're pretty heavy 12-21 teams. So they like a lot of tight ends and fullbacks in the game. So can Ruckert fill that role, or do they have to go outside and sign a free agent? Because it's something that they're definitely going to want to do. Let's see. Could look to upgrade from cornerback Bryce Hall. I think Bryce Hall is pretty much the best fourth or fifth corner you're going to get. Like, and people really soured on him because of 2 incidences. Kyle, we were really excited to watch preseason football. He got beat up by Kyle Pitts. Okay, he got beat up by Kyle Pitts. Happens. And then in week 1, he gets mossed by Mark Andrews, on which couldn't really be much better coverage from Breece Hall, and now he's trash. Like I still think
it wasn't
Breece Hall
Mark Andrews. It was Devin Duvernay.
You're right. It was Duvernay. So he gets mossed. Still good coverage, but a better catch. Obviously, he's still a good player. Like why do people? I don't get the hate for Breece. I'm not saying it necessarily from you, DKB, but sorry, Bryce Hall. So I don't think you're.
Yeah, I mean, as a fourth corner, sure, but it's just funny. Like if you go to Jets practice and you see like these guys up close in person, like Bryce Hall and Sauce in terms of height, and like even frame, I mean, like Bryce is definitely thicker than Sauce, but then just watch the way that the way that the 2 guys move, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
Like, like if Bryce doesn't get a good jam, or if he takes like a false step or something off the line of scrimmage, the receiver is going to get a good amount of separation on him. Mm-hmm. But even if the same situation happens to Sauce, he's got the recovery speed that just Bryce doesn't have.
Can we push off Quinnen Williams extension to 2024? So I'm not sure if you're asking a question like, can we extend him next year? You wouldn't want to do that. But you could push a lot of his money into future years. You don't have to pay him now and then say, oh, well, we're going to up your cap to $30 million a year. It could be, oh, we'll take, 15 this year and then more next year. So yeah, you can always maneuver the cap. Chris Jones, the best comp. The Williams brothers will take 27 total.
No.
Kyle, what do you feel is like a good, I'll top your head again, because we only have about 10 minutes left on this show. So I have to run through the chat really, really quickly. So do this quick, but what's the over under? What's the proper number in total the Williams brothers take from the Jets this year, or just in general, obviously the lifetime of the contract, the per year average? What's the good over under number? I would say, man,
32, 33.
I would say 33. 33 is the number. 27, I'm definitely taking the over on that, though.
Yeah.
Definitely taking – I would smash the over on that one. How many years did Donald have on his deal, though? He was still controllable for 3 years, right? And, yeah, that's part of it, Tim, is the fact that you could extend his fifth-year option, or you could play him on his fifth-year option. You could franchise tag him for 2 years, so we have some control over him. So maybe he'll give us a lesser price because, hey, you're signing me early, so I'll give you a little bit of a break on the year average. Like, that can happen. But I would say $25 million, Kyle. That's what it's going to be. Clean 25 mil. So what's up, Hawk? I haven't seen you in a little bit, at least in this stream. Maybe I've seen you on past ones. Keep telling people he got argued he's only worth about $3 million. I'm not sure who you're talking about there, DKB. Barrios not getting cut. I would cut Barrios. It's literally one chat, then the very next one. Barrios is getting cut. Barrios is not getting cut. I think he's getting restructured or cut it. He's not playing on an $8 million contract because he's not worth that.
I don't see how you keep him. If he had another close to all pro, I mean, he was an all pro return man 2 years ago. He was nothing of the kind. And matter of fact, towards the end of the season, he was a liability returning punts. Right. Think about that Buffalo game in particular. In Buffalo, that was horrible.
He had like one nice run on an end around this year too, where he like cut up. I forget what game. I mean, it was like the Dolphins game. It was one of the earlier games in the year, but he had like one nice run. Really, no returns on the top of my mind that were good. Most of them.
He had a great,
very bad.
He had a great end around against the Broncos in Denver.
Okay, so it was the Broncos. It was one of the earlier games.
Yeah. Other than that, yeah, I can't really think of another one. But that was a great play, though. It was like third and whatever, and he took it like 20-something yards. That was nice. But other than that, I mean, like, the guy is clearly, and this is something we said so many times, he's not a great receiver. And unfortunately, he just hasn't really developed much in that regard. He doesn't really have solid hands. He's not super quick out of his breaks. Return, like, he does have pretty good long speed for not really having long legs. But he's not the most shifty guy in the world. I mean, like, he had some vision there, but I don't know what was the reason why he was a liability and was close to dropping punts and stuff like that this past year. There's no way you can justify keeping him at 7. And I think part of the reason $7-8 million, and if you cut him, you save 5.5, 5. So he doesn't make. I'm just bringing it because this kind of correlates obviously, but Barrios doesn't make 5; he makes 8. You can cut him for 5, I believe, but $5 million is the price of a starting linebacker. It's the price of a starter. So for a backup gadget receiver who didn't do well in the return game, just replace him with a guy who makes $1 million, $1.5 million. Replace him with Zion Knight on kick returns and whoever else is a punt returner. Dude, Jeremy Curley, for all the years we've shown Jeremy Curley, was better than Barrios last year as a returner because at least he knew when to fair catch the ball. Jeremy Curley. Yeah. So he's making $8 million to do what exactly? I think his backup as a receiver, or his value as a backup receiver is minimum, $1 million value. He does not deserve $5-6 million for being a returner because he was balls last year. Let's just be honest. So you cannot on a team with a lot more flexibility, maybe, okay, just keep him, restructure him, whatever. But the thing is, if you're making a Super Bowl run or a playoff run, you can't just pay Barrios $5 million because, again, you can get a good linebacker for $5 million. Or at least a decent starter, right? Yeah, a guy who's going to play a hell of a lot more snaps too. I mean, exactly. how many snaps total? Factor in special teams. How many snaps a game does Barrios play? Is it over 20? I don't think so.
No, I was going to say like what, 10?
Yeah,
12?
Not worth it at all.
No.
And really, so someone who disagrees with that, please put in your response in the chat and tell us why we're wrong about that. I also do think too that a very minor reason that they signed him to, I think mostly they signed him because of the gadgetry and the punt return stuff and the kickoff return stuff. But a minor reason is because he's really good friends with Zach Wilson and young quarterback. Listen, teams do funny things for quarterbacks, right? The Jets drafted Scotty Miller, Mark Sanchez's good buddy from USC in the 7th round, however many years ago, right? So teams will do stuff to please their quarterback. So I believe that was also part of the reason why he got that contract.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Green Bay burned. I'm trying to fly through some of stuff, but in general, while I'm flying through the chat, Barrios is just not worth that. Again, people showing Curley, he was a lot better. Just at least knowing a fair catch a ball. Like that's all I ask. I get you can slip or a fumble can not break your way, whatever it may be, but he just looked completely lost. So I'm getting rid of him. I'm saving $5 million. I'm putting that money towards a tackle, towards. If you can have Barrios for $5 million on this team, the $5 million you save, or Fant for $5 million on this team next year, I'm taking Fant for $5 million re-signing him and cutting Barrios, right? Like, so then you look at, okay, it doesn't have to be Fant. It could be Jimmy Ward. What if Jimmy Ward costs $6 million and we don't have that? We can't afford that. We have Barrios, where you have Jimmy Ward for $6 million. So that's, you need that money. You need that money. He doesn't make an impact. If anything, he makes a negative impact on the roster. It's not like he comes in for 10 reps a game, Kyle, and every time he's like, whoa, awesome. Okay, he's worth it. But it's 10 reps. You're like, oh my God, really? Really? A ball at the 18-yard line, you let bounce to the 1, you freaking idiot. Like, that's what we were watching all year. So let's see. Rodgers ain't retiring. The rumor is Carr is using us as leverage to get a better contract from New Orleans. Is that the rumor, or is that just a bunch of panicky Jets fans who are thinking, oh shit, it's us again, we're getting used? Like, is that something you've legitimately heard, Snoopy? I don't know. Thoughts, Kyle?
I mean, I guess I wouldn't be shocked, but at the same time, I don't see why Carr would prefer to go to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Did he kill people? I think you're talking about Jalen Carter. He didn't. So again, this is to my knowledge. I haven't heard anything else. He didn't kill people. I know he was racing a guy who then crashed and killed himself and the passenger, but he didn't directly kill somebody, unless you're talking about something else, Hawk. But he was racing with a guy who then killed him, who then obviously tragically passed away. But yeah, that's not great.
No, I mean, you could argue that, okay, well, if he wasn't racing the guy and the guy had nobody to race against, maybe the people wouldn't die. Yeah. But, is a court is he going to be charged for murdering somebody because he happened to be racing when somebody died? I mean, I don't know. But and that's why I was asking the question. I don't really know a lot about the whole situation. So, but I mean, I would ask you the question, Hawk, have you ever done any street racing in any way, shape, or form? Right? Because, I mean, I don't know.
Dude, I've done some stupid stuff. It wasn't even racing, but I've done some stupid stuff in a car. Like when we were on our way to Indianapolis, whatever year that was, 2015. So I was 21, 22 years old. We were driving 125 miles per hour in Vinny's car. Vinny, obviously. Yeah. And now I think about it, I'm not even afraid of losing control, hitting a pot. Hitting a pot will obviously be shitty, or if it was raining out, that'd be shitty. My biggest fear with going that fast now in Ohio is if a fucking deer runs out, you're dead. You're all dead. So that's my fear when driving fast. Even on the highways by me, New Jersey's crazy with the freaking deer. So going 70 on the highway, it's not sketchy because I'm going to crash it. It's just because if that thing jumps through my windshield, then I am going to be dead, especially in a car. So yeah. Who takes a bigger leap year to Jermaine Johnson or Michael Clemens? Kyle, I like this question. I'm going to throw it to you.
Jermaine Johnson, definitely. I mean, if we're just talking potential. A bigger leap. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Michael Clemens, I think you're going to pretty much there's no doubt he can get better as a player, but I think
he outperformed his expectations to me, Michael Clemens, this year.
Absolutely. But he is already 25 and Jermaine Johnson's certainly no young pup either. He's 23, but he is a little bit younger for sure. And I'm thinking about their ages when they started the season. I don't know what their ages are now, but he's about 1.5, 2 years older. But you draft Jermaine Johnson for the potential. I mean, one guy ran a low 4.5 or something like that versus, the other guy is kind of more of a plotter. Michael Clemens is a strong, tough guy. There's no doubt about it. He's really strong and tough. I mean, I think he plays really hard, has a good motor, but I mean, one guy really has potential to potentially be a good passer. So he has a long way to go in terms of, stringing together moves and things like that. But yeah, his potential to take a leap, I think, is much better. And Clemens is kind of I think it's kind of like what you see is what you get. I wouldn't expect him to get much better than what we saw this year. He'll get better, but I think if you're expecting him to be a potential Pro Bowl player year in, year out, I don't think so. I just don't think the athletic skill set is there.
It was so funny how the expectation, like Michael Clemens, the thought process changed when you initially drafted him. Jets Twitter was, oh my God, we drafted a guy who's 25 years old. We hate this guy, to, okay, we're watching interviews with him. We love him. And now he's our hero. Everybody, the narrative changed on him so quickly. But Jermaine Johnson, just based on his athletic upside and his uptick in snaps that we're expecting him to take if a Carl Lawson is cut. Michael Clemens did impress me, crashing hard on that tight end and stuff, and running game, he's pretty good. But it's Jermaine Johnson to me.
If we can take a moment, just because we're talking about Clemens and we were just talking about Jalen Carter and whether or not he's a bad guy or this and that, it's just interesting to contrast it. Now, I don't remember exactly what happened with Michael Clemens, but did he have an unregistered firearm or something like that, and he was carrying it when he wasn't supposed to be? What was his legal situation that he was in? Do you remember?
With who again? Sorry, I was
Michael Clemens. Just because we were just talking about him.
I don't remember. There was something I don't remember.
Okay, there was something. So like that's. I mean, like I don't really hear any Jets fans. I mean, certainly was a concern at the time when we drafted him, and a lot of people didn't really know anything. But were we saying, "Oh man, this Clemens guy"? I mean, like Jets fans pretty much loved him from day one when he stepped onto the podium, and he was just a massive human being with an intimidating stare. Like people were really quick to overlook that. So I mean, like again, like number one, do people have the ability to make amends for the wrong things they did? Now, there are certain things that, you have to, people have to, if they did something really, really, really fucked up, yeah, they should be held accountable for it. But you also have to be able to evaluate. And this is why these like team meetings with these players and stuff are so important. If the guy did fuck up, is he genuine? Does it seem like he's genuinely sorry for what he did? And is he genuinely willing to change his actions? All right. And that's something, that you can't, it's much harder for us to assess. It's hard for any team to assess that, but it's much easier for them to assess it. I mean, like, so I don't know. I mean, like with the whole Jalen Carter thing, I don't want to say he's a bad guy, but I just don't like when people jump to conclusions so quickly.
Oh, dude, like at the end of the day, yeah, no, like we all fucked up. And
because
if I was 21 years old and just won the national championship and I got put in I don't know what the car was, I'm assuming some expensive, let's just say it's a Lamborghini, I might have done some stupid shit too, but we had to keep moving on, Kyle. It's almost 8:00. Which prospects I've officially watched, Broderick Jones, Paris Campbell, and Peter Skronsky, and I know of other prospects, but I'm not going to lie to you, like a lot of people out there will, and just watch a minute or two or a draft report and then say they know the guy. So only 3 legitimately. Kyle, have you checked anybody else out? I don't think so.
No, right? But when I do start to get into draft prospects, I will look into tackles first, for sure.
What if Green Bay insists on packing Rodgers and Bakhtiari in order to clear cap space? I think it's a possibility that they do that, but the problem is like they're already working from a spot. Like, do they want to take less to trade to get rid of Bakhtiari? Because they're already looking at a situation where at least we're talking about it, Kyle, in terms of, okay, did they get 2 seconds because of how big Rodgers' contract is? Now you're talking about adding on Bakhtiari, he played 1 game in 2021 and 11 games this year. So adding that on, you're going to get less draft capital. Like it's not like saying like, oh, we want Bakhtiari, we're trading for him. Based on his contract, you have to restructure too. I think it's relatively big, but I think it could be a possibility.
I mean, he and Rodgers are really good friends. There was some video that came out, I believe it was last year, where Bakhtiari gifted Rodgers like one of those golf carts or whatever. It was like custom made. Rodgers seemed pretty happy. So I don't know. I guess I could see it as a potential thing because the Jets, Joe Douglas loves offensive linemen, and the Jets certainly need offensive linemen. So I could see it potentially happening, but very unlikely, I think.
We agree here, Blake. Replace Bled and Braden Man. DKB says thoughts on people saying we can't afford many moves to give Carr players if we can sign him. We're not going to be able to do much more after we sign Carr. We're not going to be able to do too much. Like you're not signing a Whitehead, Tomlinson, Uzama, Conklin, all these guys like you did last year. I think you're probably looking at another like relatively big move. Maybe like you get. I don't know. Maybe you get a tackle, maybe you get, something like that, or maybe like a safety. And then like another decent move or two, but we're not going to be spending like we did last year. But I think they still have room for a move or two, because you look at the cap, not next year, but the year after that, with like $100 million in cap space. We have a lot of flexibility in the future. So they're going to push the money to the future. They're going to sign a player or two. They know that they need to make the playoffs, especially if they get a quarterback. So they're going to make some moves. Let's see. Red Darius Slayton can be had for under 10 million. Thoughts? I'd have to watch him more individually. I know he's a guy who puts up like 500 to 700 yards, at least the last 2 years. So he's at least decent. But are you talking about him versus at $8 million for much less of a player than Corey Davis is at 10.5? I don't know. I have to watch him, but
yeah, I don't really have a lot of thoughts on him. I'll say he was he like undrafted or a very late round draft pick? And I think he's really exceeded expectations as to what he was for a player. But I don't know. It seemed like a lot of Giants fans were kind of sick of him at some point. I don't claim to know a lot about him. He's not a guy who, when I watched him, I'm like, oh, wow. Like he's got a really unique skill set, and I think he could be something more. It just doesn't really pop off to me, but he's not a bad player.
Carmelo says, do we keep Mosley? I do.
This year, you have to.
Yeah, this year. It's just you're not going to replace both, a safety, 2 starting safeties, 2 linebackers, defensive tackles, offensive linemen. So I think he's left on. I do think he restructures because he's not worth, I think he's like $21 million cap hit this year. I think his contract, there's so many hurdles and stuff. I don't really even know exactly how it all works out with him, but I think he gets worked out, or he works out a deal with the Jets to restructure. Love the breakdowns of the chat. Keep it rolling, boys. We appreciate that. Blake, again, I know we're damn. I don't know what that is. Damn Kev, Kyle, cool, my guy.
Because Kev, yeah, there you go. He called me sidekick.
Oh, sidekick. Wow, taking shots at Kyle. I like it. I like people getting on Kyle. Let's see. Which, by the way, sorry about not having a show last
he also had another shot at me too. He said, "Yeah." He said something like, teams bend over backward for quarterbacks. The Texans did that so much so with Deshaun Watson. If you want to use the Texans as an example, go ahead, my guy. I mean, tell me an organization that's been run more shitty over the last couple of years, including, the Jets, than the Texans. I mean, they traded DeAndre Hopkins for pennies, and they told Deshaun Watson, hey, you're going to help us pick the next GM and head coach. And then they didn't. And, that whole thing. And then, how much of the whole massage thing was, Busby and who happened to be really good friends with Texans ownership trying to get revenge on Deshaun Watson because he wanted a trade. I don't know, but come on. And the whole, the Mr. Preacher Chaplain man who I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was basically like a de facto GM despite having very little football experience. The Texans are a model franchise. Yeah, sure.
Bryce Hall went from being the most overrated player on the team 2 years ago to now being one of the most. He's definitely underrated. He's one of the better. Can you find and obviously we have to watch the teams, but I don't think you're going to find many better cornerback 4s or 5s in the league than Bryce Hall. Now it's a conversation. Do you trade him because he's making $3 million, whatever it is, on his cap this year for cornerback 5? Maybe it's a possibility, but with a good cornerback class this year, where would you rank Sauce this year? Based on everything I've heard and seen from the other corners, which I haven't really seen too much to be transparent because we're not looking for a corner, Sauce will still be number 1. I don't think there's a dominant corner this year. It seems like it's more defensive lineman type guys and quarterbacks at the top. I really haven't seen one corner solidify himself as like a top 5 pick like Sauce was last year. So, Joe, have you tried an offseason mock to rebuild with a 4? See, the thing, no, not necessarily, Joe to Joe, but with a lot of those simulators, you can't, restructure this contract to take $10 million off the cap this year so you can sign another player and put that to 2024. So it would be hard this year if they're not going to restructure deals and push money to future years, but they're almost undoubtedly going to do that, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, I don't know who it was. Somebody said that Michael Carter.
By the way, is this person referring to the Jets X Factor off-season simulator?
I don't know. Maybe they are.
Is it running right now?
Yes, but we're still tinkering with it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it'd be hard. And I saw somebody mention that Michael Carter had one good year, one bad year. I get that, but that one bad year means a lot more to me than one good year. And even if they're equal, half your sample size not being good is not a great, indicator for your future. Or it's at least you can't feel great about it, right?
There's a good amount of running backs who kind of tear it up year one and then they never quite get back to that level. And I'm not saying that is the case with Michael Carter. It's not like he's had a huge injury or whatever. But what's the name of the running back who was drafted in 2012, 6th round pick? Alfred Morris, I believe. He had like 1,600 yards as a rookie. Now, granted, you could argue that a lot of that is because RG3, it's an extra gap to defend in the run game. Mm-hmm. They had Trent Williams and a bunch of other studs on the offensive line and whatever. And he's kind of just a product of the Shanahan system. That's fine. But if you're getting 1,600 yards, you are doing something right. And then he was never able to quite get to that level again. I mean, there are cases where, sometimes running backs don't get to that level. So I don't know. It has to be somewhat concerning.
Yeah, no, it is. Bigger leap, JJ or Elijah Moore? Elijah Moore. From year 2, just strictly year 2, I'm going to say Elijah Moore is a much better player as a third-year player than a second-year player than JJ will be as a first-year player or second-year player. I think Elijah Moore's going to be solid next year with a good quarterback.
I would agree
Versus
with that.
being pretty much nothing. He was a nothing this year. What's up, people? Talking Jets with Tigo.
But I tell you what, though, our offensive coordinator is going to have to do a lot, and new wide receivers coach is going to have to do a lot to motivate him, because I think that so much of Elijah Moore is, I think he gets in his own head. I think he likes to kind of like portray himself as this guy who, and maybe I'm being a little harsh on him. He and AJ Brown have talked a lot about like mental health and all that kind of stuff, and which is, especially like mental health for a lot of people is down the tubes nowadays. And I don't know. I think he got all in his own mind a lot last year. And a lot of that has to be like dumbass offensive coordinator using me in a way that he shouldn't be using me. I got a quarterback who cannot even hit a swing route, on a check down. And I want to get my new contract. My boy AJ just got one, but AJ's been in a better situation than me. So the new offensive coordinator, the new quarterback, everyone's going to have to do a lot. You want a guy who's going to be able to stay motivated himself. Unfortunately, Elijah Moore is super talented, but I don't think he necessarily is that. So,
yeah, and it could be a thing too, where like he saw the quarterback situation, he saw he's being used in the offense, all this stuff, and was like, dude, like, the motivation obviously ticked away, which you want to be there regardless. But it's understandable at the minimum to say, okay, if you're not being used right, if you have a bad quarterback, are you going to put in all that or all that effort? Which again, you should, because you're making millions of dollars a year, but it's not like I don't understand it. Talking to Justin Tigo said I think this is in reference to Michael Clemens. He carried a registered firearm to campus, and campus didn't allow it. Yeah, but then would he get in legal trouble, or that would just be with the campus and their rules because it's private property? I don't know. That's an interesting case. There's a Jeep Wrangler. Let's see. Wasn't Bakhtiari hurt? Yeah, Bakhtiari's played 11 games last year and 1 the year prior. So he's played 12 out of the last 34 games possible. Or I don't know if they made the play. Did they make the playoffs 2 years ago? Yeah, right. Not last year, but the year before that they were in the playoffs, I believe. Yeah, because I thought they lost to the Niners like 7-10 or whatever that was. Let's see. How would you grade this year's quarterback carousel to last year's? Last year seems like a bust. Well, this year's quarterbacks. Who were the top quarterbacks last year, Kyle? I'm blanking out because I didn't think about them at all.
Last year's quarterbacks.
Right?
Wow.
Like I don't remember.
We are drawing a blank. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't as good of a quarterback draft. Let's see.
I don't remember.
Well, number one was Trayvon Walker. Number 2 was Hutchinson. So if you're talking the first 2 picks weren't a quarterback, it wasn't as good of a class. Pick 3 was Stingley. Pick 4 was Sauce. Pick 5 was Kayvon. Pick 6 was wasn't 6 Kwanu. 7 was your boy from Alabama.
Evan Neal.
Pick 8. Who the hell was pick 8? Garrett Wilson was pick 10. Pick 9 was Charles Cross.
Pick 8 was London.
Okay, London, Cross 9, Garrett Wilson 10,
Pickett
was 11.
Pickett, the guy in the Steelers. Pickett was the first.
Yeah,
one.
Pickett. 20.
Yeah, no. Okay, so obviously
that's the reason why we're blanking.
No, yeah, exactly. So I haven't studied this year's quarterback carousel, but seemingly this year at least you have Young, you have Stroud, you have Levis, you have Anthony Richardson, who all seem like they're going to be at the minimum top 20 picks to be safe. Where last year it didn't even seem like there might be a first round guy. So yeah, this year is better, but why would we worry? We shouldn't be worried about it. The only way we're worried about it is if we miss out on Carr, we miss out on Rodgers, we miss out on whoever else, and it's shit. We're stuck with Jameis Winston and a rookie quarterback, which at that point, I'm probably just going to see you. I'm going to take a 2-year sabbatical like I did for, what was it, like 6 months during the Gase year where I just stopped doing anything. You guys will see me in a little bit. I might have to hang the hat up. Let's see. Andrew says, can't we just grab our quarterback and start our offseason already? Yeah, no, it's 11 days until free agency, and it will be most likely within the next week. I really hope, because I do not want to live stream next week without a quarterback. By Monday, Wednesday, we will know, in my opinion. Yeah, well, again, 10 days. Buffalo Jets fan says, "Sup, boys? What's up?" Obviously, I've already promoted the podcast, but this is the other host, so go to his channel, check it out. Go to Patreon, link in the description for the podcast. We've done 2. I think the first one was like 50 minutes. The second one was like an hour, talking about the quarterback situation, Jets, and re-signing guys and cutting guys was the second one. So go check it out. We'll record again this week, and 1 podcast a week. $5 a month, a cup of coffee from maybe not Dunkin', but Starbucks is near $5 a coffee, right, Kyle? You're a big Starbucks guy.
No.
I said sidekick because you forgot his name. Sorry, Kyle, you forgot your name. We give him that little thing in the intro though that says and Kyle Smith. So
Yeah,
you got to remember it, Kevin.
Yeah, it comes on for a split second.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle. Anything else to add? We pushed a little bit past the time for me because I have to go to work at midnight. So last words.
Thanks for watching. I won't say anything else because I've already been going on too long, and you got to get to bed.
Yes. So I appreciate everybody for watching again. The podcast next week will be on Thursday. Most likely could be on Wednesday, but if any news happens in the next couple of days, we'll obviously hop on live near that time. Go support the Patreon. It's in the link. I appreciate everybody for being here, and we will see you